Chapter 168. Feng Ling Er looked at Qin Feiyang with disdain. Wasn't it just a few broken bones? Was there a need to act like, with the bone in hand, I have the world? Besides, these sand whales were not something that the white jade magic snake could compare to. They were all existences at the War Emperor level. Would they buy this? However, the next moment, she was dumbfounded. The sand whales that were blocking the entrance all retreated, making a wide path. Qin Feiyang frowned. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and leave. Oh. Feng Ling Er nodded her head, took a step forward, and ran towards Ling Yunfei. Qin Feiyang followed, closely behind. The white jade magic snake and the sand whale also followed behind them. The scene was extremely vast. After the three of them met up, Ling Yunfei anxiously looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Are you all right?" "I won't die, let's go." Qin Feiyang smiled and urged. Feng Ling Er turned her head to look at the group of fierce beasts behind her and said worriedly, "I'm afraid that no matter where we go, they will follow us." Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "Call Elder Wan over." Feng Ling Er shouted, "Grandpa Wan, come over quickly." Not long later, Elder Wan broke through the air and arrived. When he saw the scene, his old eyes were filled with bewilderment. Shua! He vigilantly landed beside the three of them, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Stinking brat, tell me honestly, what did you do to anger the heavens?" "Let's go first," Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. Elder Wan nodded, waved his old hand, and swept up the three of them into the sky. Roar! Dozens of sand whales roared towards the sky, bringing with them a world-shaking might as they rushed into the sky, chasing after the four of them. The group of white jade magic snake also chased after them in the desert like a madman. Elder Wan said in shock and anger, "Bastard, what exactly did you do?" Qin Feiyang said, "It's because of these bones." Elder Wan frowned. He grabbed a rib and examined it carefully. Several breaths later, his eyes shone brightly and his old face was filled with shock. This old man has never seen such hard human bones before. If it can be forged into a weapon, it will definitely be invincible and invincible. Elder Wan said excitedly. Feng Ling Er and Ling Yunfei looked at each other in disbelief. Elder Wan turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked with a beaming smile, "Haotian, do you think you can?" without waiting for him to finish speaking. Qin Feiyang snatched it over and put it into his chinquan bag. He smiled and said, "Elder, don't be in such a hurry. We can discuss it slowly after we return." All right. Elder Wan nodded, but there was a glint in his eyes. Behind him, bestial roars shook the heavens. His ferocious might covered the sky and covered the earth. Their faces turned pale. Feng Ling Er said anxiously, "Grandpa Wan, they're still chasing after us. What should we do?" "Unless we return the bones to them," but Elder Wan frowned. It was obvious that he was reluctant. Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang shook his head without leaving a trace. He understood what Ling Yunfei meant and took everyone to hide in the castle. But now Wolf King was inside. Once Elder Wan went in, he would definitely associate it with his true identity. After all, this old man was the law-enforcing elder of the martial imperial palace. How could his mind be simple? Come back. Just when the four of them were at a loss, an ethereal voice sounded in the minds of all the sand whale and white jade demonic snake. However, Qin Feiyang and the other three didn't hear it. Suddenly, the sand whale and white jade demonic snake both stopped, looked at the four of them coldly, and turned back. What's going on? Why aren't they chasing? Sensing the abnormality behind them, Qin Feiyang and the others looked back and were extremely surprised. Isn't it better if they don't chase? Well, let's go back to Yen City at full speed. Jiang Haotian, tell us about the situation in the valley. Elder Wan breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile. Then he propped up a battle chi boundary and led the three of them away without looking back. And on the same night, with a loud boom, the valley sunk into the desert. Along with it, dozens of sand whales and countless white, jade demonic snakes disappeared. 21 days passed. Yen City finally entered Elder Wan's sight. Elder Wan said, "Brat, we've arrived at Yen City. Come out quickly." These days, Qin Feiyong had been in the castle, copying the return formula. The last stroke had been half successfully copied. Hearing Elder Wan's call, he closed the iron book and appeared in the boundary. At the same time, Ling Yunfei and Feng Ling Er also opened their eyes one after another. "We're finally back, but this time I didn't get anything." Feng Ling Er sighed and glared at Qin Feiyong angrily. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "Why are you waiting for me? It's not like I forced you to go." "Bastard!" Feng Ling Er gritted her teeth. Whoosh! Elder Wan led the three of them and flew directly into the city. Although there were rules in Yen City that forbade flying on beasts, this was only for ordinary people. Experts like Elder Wan were not restricted, and the news of Qin Feiyong's return immediately spread like wildfire in Yen City. For a time, spies from various forces rushed to the martial imperial hall. It could be said that the clouds were moving from all directions. Martial imperial hall, conference hall. The beautiful woman had been waiting for a long time. When Qin Feiyong and the other two entered, they were immediately scolded. The three of them were also unprecedentedly obedient, lowering their heads and silently being scolded. A moment later, the beautiful woman seemed to be thirsty. She picked up the teacup, took a sip, and asked, "Do you dare to sneak out again in the future?" The three of them shook their heads. The beautiful woman said, "Since you know your mistake, then don't go to the pig cage." What? The three of them were stunned. Ling Yunfei asked, "Elder, you really got a pig cage?" "Do you think we're joking?" Elder Wan snorted coldly. Qin Feiyong and the other two immediately broke out in cold sweat. Fortunately, they were not stubborn. Otherwise, they would really go to the pig cage for a while. It was scary just thinking about it. The beautiful woman waved her hand and said, "All right, you can leave. I still have something to discuss with Elder Wan." "Wait." Elder Wan hurriedly got up and said with a smile, "Jiang Haoyan, this old man has worked hard on this journey. Do you want to give me one of those human bones?" "Of course, this is what I should do." Qin Feiyong took out a rib and handed it over with both hands. The beautiful woman's face suddenly revealed a look of surprise. "Then I'll take my leave first." Qin Feiyong had just turned around when he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Elder Wan and smiled awkwardly. "Seniors, now that I'm back, shouldn't you return Fatso and Lu Hong's image crystals to me?" The beautiful woman took out 2 image crystals and placed them on the table. She said coldly, "If you dare to run around again, I'll confiscate them all." I won't. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and went forward to put away the image crystals. Then, like a thief, he quickly slipped away. After the three of them left the main hall, the beautiful woman could not help but shake her head and laugh. Then, she looked at the rib in Elder Wan's hand and frowned. "Where did you get this?" "Jiang Haoyan brought it out from that place," Elder Wan said as he sized up the human skeleton. His old eyes shone brightly. "This human bone is glowing with a layer of treasure light. This person's strength must have reached the peak when he was alive. When did such an expert appear in the county of Yen?" The beautiful woman was puzzled. Elder Wan said, "I'm also puzzled. Why don't we discuss it with the hall master?" "To be honest, I want the hall master to go with me to the desert of death again and get the skeleton out of the lake." "Okay." The beautiful woman nodded. Soothing Lake. As soon as Qin Feiyong returned, Shizheng frowned and looked at him unhappily. Qin Feiyong was a little embarrassed. He laughed dryly and said, "Senior, I'm really sorry about that." Shizheng said, "I hope there won't be a next time." "Definitely not." Qin Feiyong raised his hand and promised. After sending Shizheng away, Qin Feiyong walked into the pavilion. Fatso and Lu Hong immediately ran down from the second floor. Jiang Lauda, I missed Fat Lord so much. Fatso opened his arms and ran towards Qin Feiyong, the fat all over his body jiggling. Qin Feiyong's face twitched as he dodged sideways. Fatso immediately looked at him with hidden bitterness. Qin Feiyong shivered, goosebumps all over his body. Can you stop disgusting me? Glaring fiercely at Fatso, he walked to the side of the tea table and sat down on the chair. He gently rubbed his forehead, looking a little tired. Seeing this, Lu Hong very sensibly squatted at the side to make tea. Fatso sat next to Qin Feiyong and laughed. Boss, you went out for more than 50 days. Did you get any treasures? Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him, took out the image crystal, threw it on the tea table and said, Take good care of it in the future. If it's confiscated again, I'm not responsible. Fatso chuckled and hurriedly put it away. The tea is ready. Lu Hong poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of Qin Feiyong. Thank you. Qin Feiyong thanked her, picked up the teacup and said, Tell me about the situation in Yen City these days. Lu Hong said, Except for the marriage between the eldest prince and Lin Yi, nothing major happened. During this time, we also issued medicinal pills every 10 days according to your instructions. Since you left, we have issued 5 times. Qin Feiyong nodded and asked, What about the blood-killing token? Lu Hong shook her head and said, Elder Ji is investigating, but he hasn't found anything. There is no news from Steward Li. Qin Feiyong drank tea while pondering. He had an intuition that the origin of the blood-killing token was definitely not simple. After a while, Qin Feiyong put down the teacup and said, Fatso, give me the eldest prince's medicinal herbs. Fatso frowned and said, Do you really plan to refine for him? 10 sets of medicinal herbs. I can get 5 sets, which is equivalent to 20 million gold coins. Why wouldn't I refine? It's just that it's not so easy to take away these superb scarlet fire colored glass pills. But this royal family is really rich. They actually used 5 superb scarlet fire colored glass pills as a betrothal gift. Qin Feiyong lifted the corner of his mouth and sneered. Fatso was shocked. He took out a chinquan bag, handed it to Qin Feiyong and asked, What are you planning? Qin Feiyong took the chinquan bag, looked at it a little and said faintly, If there is no accident, the eldest prince will definitely come to me in these 2 days. At that time, you can say that I am cultivating and have no time to receive him. Okay. The two nodded. Qin Feiyong said, Lu Hong, help me prepare a brush and ink. Chapter 169. After Lu Hong went upstairs, Qin Feiyong asked, Fatso, how's her performance these days? Fatso chuckled and said, There's no problem at all. She's probably been completely conquered by your obscene power, boss. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Can you be more serious? Fat Lord is already very serious, okay? Fatso said, feeling wronged. Fine. Qin Feiyong stretched out his hand and said, Just pretend I didn't say anything. Duh. With a series of footsteps, Lu Hong came down from upstairs with a pen, ink, and paper. She came to the tea table and neatly placed them in front of Qin Feiyong. Then she sat aside and helped to grind the ink. She looked like a well-behaved little maid. Qin Feiyong observed Lu Hong for a moment and said with a faint smile, Actually, you don't have to lower yourself. We can get along like friends. But the premise is that you don't do anything bad to me. Lu Hong was taken aback and asked, Is it really okay? Of course, Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Lu Hong also smiled, her face glowing. Not to mention, it was quite charming. In fact, Lu Hong's beauty was not bad. It was just that in the past, she often wore heavy makeup which covered her essence, because at that time she had no strength or background. If she wanted to survive and go further, She had to give up her dignity in this way to please others. And since she followed Qin Feiyang, she no longer had to please others. She also slowly realized that she could live so easily. So gradually, she didn't care much about her appearance, which made her more charming. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He took 2 pieces of blank paper and wrote with a pen. After a while, he made 2 lists. Then, he took out his chinquan bag and threw it to Fatso, saying, "Take a look. See if there are any of the herbs on this list in my chinquan bag." All right. Fatso immediately picked up the 2 pieces of paper and checked them carefully. Suddenly, he turned to look at Qin Feiyang and said, "Boss Qin, Fat Lord can roughly guess what this list is. It should be illusory form pills. But why can't Fat Lord understand this list?" "This is a potential pill," Qin Feiyang said. As he spoke, 2 beams of light burst out from his eyes. "Potential pill?" Fatso was stunned and asked in confusion, "How come I've never heard of Fat Lord before?" Qin Feiyang said, "Not just you. Even I haven't heard of it before. Hurry up and look for it." "Oh," Fatso responded and busied himself with a belly full of doubts. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then turned to look at Lu Hong and said, "I want to talk to you about something." "What is it?" Seeing Qin Feiyang's serious expression, Lu Hong could not help but become nervous. Qin Feiyang said, "Actually, my real name is not Jiang Haoyan, but Qin Feiyang." "What?" Lu Hong suddenly stood up and looked at him in shock. The person wanted by the royal family had actually been by her side all this time. "What's there to be surprised about?" Fatso pursed his lips and said, "You know about it too?" Lu Hong's face was filled with astonishment. Fatso said helplessly, "Not only Fat Lord knows about it, even Ling Yunfei and Feng Ling Er know about it. Only you, this fool, have never seen through it." "What do you mean?" Lu Hong frowned. "Have you forgotten about the wolf in the castle?" Fatso rolled his eyes. Lu Hong recalled carefully and finally understood. Her heart was filled with bitterness. Everyone who went to the castle had guessed Qin Feiyang's true identity, but she was completely unaware. She was too stupid. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Now you have 2 choices, leave or stay." "Leave." Lu Hong frowned and said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll tell on you?" "That's because I misjudged you." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Lu Hong looked at him in a daze. Originally, she thought that Qin Feiyang would say to kill her to silence her, but she did not expect that the result would be such an answer. Immediately after, Lu Hong smiled and said, "I believe in Fatso's judgment." Fatso often whispered in her ear that Qin Feiyang was not a simple person. Perhaps this was an opportunity given to her by God, a way out. She was willing to bet on this. Fatso smiled and said, "Fat Lord also has times when he misjudges." Lu Hong said with a smile, "Then I can only accept my fate." Fatso was stunned, then shook his head and laughed. He gave Lu Hong a thumbs up, his eyes full of praise. Lu Hong also never expected this ending. Once, she hated Qin Feiyang, because back then in the pill hall, Qin Feiyang slapped her mercilessly and even almost killed her. Originally, she thought that they would be enemies forever. Unexpectedly, they became friends today. It was as if the heavens were playing a huge joke on her. And Qin Feiyang was also very satisfied with Lu Hong's performance. He took out a top-grade red fire-colored glass pill and handed it over with a smile. "Take it." In this way, Qin Feiyang only had 5 pills left. "Thank you." Lu Hong took the top-grade red fire-colored glass pill. Her hands were trembling. She had been longing for this pill for a long time. Now that she finally got it, she felt like she was dreaming. Qin Feiyang said, "Oh right, prepare 2 more bamboo slips." Lu Hong was stunned and asked doubtfully, "Prepare the bamboo slips for what?" Fatso rolled his eyes and said, "Nonsense, of course it's to give you a perfect martial skill." Lu Hong's delicate body trembled. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her vision became blurred. A perfect martial skill. She didn't even dare to think about it before, because that was an extravagant hope. It was impossible to achieve in a lifetime. But now, the person in front of her not only gave her a top-grade red fire-colored glass pill, but also a perfect martial skill. Was this really not a dream? Why? You don't want it. Then I won't force you, Qin Feiyang teased. Think about it. I'll go get the bamboo slips now. Lu Hong hurriedly nodded and ran upstairs happily. Fatso sighed. She's so easily moved. Seems like she's quite simple. Everyone has a simple side, but under the cruel environment it was buried. How is it? Did you find it? Qin Feiyang asked. Fatso nodded. There are all the medicinal ingredients for the illusory form pill, enough for you to refine dozens of them. Speaking of which, a trace of suspicion crawled up in Fatso's eyes and he frowned. But there are a total of 33 kinds of medicinal ingredients for this potential pill, and there are only 2 kinds in the universe bag. I say, boss, what kind of potential pill does it have? Fatso looked at him in confusion. It's a secret for now. Qin Feiyang smiled mysteriously. At this time, Lu Hong took 2 bamboo slips and walked downstairs. The perfect martial skill that Qin Feiyang gave to Lu Hong was the Mystic Moon Palm and Gale Steps. After copying it, he stood up and put away the universe bag and said to the 2 of them, "No matter what, you have to help me find the medicinal ingredients for the potential pill within 3 months, no matter the cost." All right, the 2 of them nodded. Also, if anyone asks, don't say the words potential pill. Qin Feiyang warned and then went to the castle. He first refined an illusory form pill and returned to Jiang Haoyan's appearance. Then he began to refine the 10 scarlet fire colored glass pills. Outside, Fatso frowned and said, "Qin Feiyang doesn't seem to be joking this time. When has he ever joked?" Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him, lowered her head and muttered to herself for a while, then said, "Find a chance to go to the treasure pavilion and ask Manager Li. That's easy. Fat Lord will go find a disciple of the Martial Imperial Palace and send a message to Manager Li. You take care of things here." After Fatso finished speaking, he got up and left in a hurry. In the evening, Manager Li came to the soothing lake. When he saw the list, he immediately frowned. 33 medicinal ingredients. He had never seen them before. He looked at Fatso and asked, "Can I ask, what kind of medicinal ingredients are these?" Lu Hong said with a smile, "Sorry, Jiang Haoyan told me not to reveal it." Manager Li said, "Then where is he now?" Lu Hong said with a faint smile, "Sorry, he is cultivating in seclusion and will not receive anyone for the time being. If you want to see him, I can make an appointment for you in advance." Appointment? Manager Li's old face tensed up, and he was very unhappy. In any case, he was the manager of the treasure pavilion and a war emperor. Now he had to make an appointment to see a little martial master. What kind of world was this? "Senior, you can't blame Jiang Lauda for this. He is really too busy. If there's anything, we can talk about it." Fatso chuckled. The world is really degenerating day by day. Manager Li sighed and nodded. "Okay, I will try my best to help you find these medicinal ingredients. But in terms of price," Lu Hong said with a smile, "Senior, we are all old acquaintances. If you can give me a discount, try to give me a discount. You really don't want to suffer any losses. How much do you want?" Manager Li was a little helpless. "As much as you have." Lu Hong said, "Okay, do you have an image crystal?" Manager Li asked. "Of course." Fatso chuckled and took out the image crystal. Lu Hong also took it out. This kid is really generous. Manager Li couldn't help but feel envious. The 3 of them bit their fingers and dripped a drop of blood on each other's image crystal, establishing a contract bridge. This way, it would be convenient for them to contact each other in the future. Dong! At this time, there was a knock on the door. Who is it? Fatso frowned. His Royal Highness, the eldest prince, is here. Quickly opened the door to welcome him. A shout was heard. So arrogant. Fatso lifted the corner of his mouth and shouted mercilessly. Fat Lord is meeting an important guest. Wait outside for Fat Lord. Hearing this, the eldest prince, who was standing outside the door, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Next to the eldest prince, there was a young man in luxurious clothes. It was Lin Han's son, Lin Hao. Beside the two of them stood 4 palace guards. But these 4 guards were stunned at this moment. Lin Hao was also dumbfounded. Someone actually dared to speak to the eldest prince like this? After coming back to his senses, one of the guards suddenly shouted, "You dare to let the eldest prince outside in the cold wind? Are you tired of living? Damn. So what if he's the eldest prince? This is not the palace. Don't be a tyrant here. Since you are here, you have to abide by Jiang Lao Da's rules. If I ask you to wait outside, then wait outside. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Fatso was extremely arrogant. He didn't take the eldest prince seriously at all. This is outrageous. Chapter 170. Stop! The first prince shouted. The guard turned around and looked at him with a face full of anger. First prince, your body is priceless. How can you be humiliated by these lowly commoners? That's right, although we are in the Martial Imperial Palace, we have every reason to ask the higher-ups of the Martial Imperial Palace for a reasonable explanation for how they treated you. Lin Hao also fanned the flames. Last time, Qin Feiyang went to the Lin family and took away 5 million gold coins. He and his father, Lin Han, still couldn't let go of it. If I say stop, then stop. When is it your turn to interrupt? The first prince said in a low voice. The 4 guards and Lin Hao's expression froze and immediately fell silent. Actually, the first prince was very angry and puzzled. From the time he met Qin Feiyang until now, he had never done anything to offend Qin Feiyang. But why would Qin Feiyang make things difficult for him at this moment? Could it be that because he could refine top-quality pills, he had reached the point of looking down on everyone? If that was the case, as the first prince of the royal family, he would definitely not let this go. In the guest hall, Manager Li was extremely shocked. Did this Fatso eat a leopard's guts? Fatso said shyly, "Don't look at Fat Lord like that. Fat Lord is not a girl." Ugh. Manager Li was stunned and directly retched. This damn Fatso was really disgusting. He didn't know how Jiang Haotian could stand it. Cough, cough. He coughed and said in a low voice, "Fatso, although the first prince doesn't dare to do anything to you in the Martial Imperial Palace, if you leave the Martial Imperial Palace, with his identity and status, he has 100 ways to kill you. You'd better keep a low profile." Fatso said disdainfully, "To only 100 ways. If he dares to provoke Fat Lord has 10,000 ways to teach him how to behave." Manager Li's face twitched, and he had the urge to beat Fatso up. It seemed that he couldn't stay in this place any longer. He didn't want to lose control and beat up Fatso. This old man is leaving. You don't have to send me off. After putting away the image crystal, Manager Li turned around and left in a hurry. "Senior, please wait a moment." At this moment, Lu Hong opened her mouth and earnestly requested, "I hope that you can help us gather these herbs within 3 months." 3 months? Manager Li frowned and nodded. "All right, I'll start dealing with it when I get back." Lu Hong walked over and opened the door. She stepped aside and said with a smile, "Senior, take care." Manager Li walked to the door and smiled at the first prince. The first prince bowed in a very humble manner. After that, Manager Li walked out and left the soothing lake without looking back. Only then did Lu Hong look at the first prince. She bowed and asked, "Your Highness, is there anything I can help you with?" Lin Hao said angrily. Are you going to let the first prince stand here forever? Who are you? Lu Hong furrowed her brows. Lin Hao said proudly. I'm the first young master of the Lin family, Lin Hao. I've heard a lot about you, young Master Lin. Now that I've met you today, you're indeed a talented and outstanding man. Lu Hong said with a smile, appearing gentle and courteous. Lin Hao became more and more proud. But suddenly, Lu Hong changed the topic and said coldly, We don't have many people here, so there's no one to serve you. If you want to be a first young master, go back to your Lin family. I won't see you out. Lin Hao's face immediately turned green. The first prince frowned and said with a smile, Miss, can you give me some face? How would I dare not give face to your highness? However, Zhang Haoyan is cultivating in seclusion. Before he started, he told me not to meet anyone. If your highness is here for me, and Fatso will naturally welcome you. But if you're here for Zhang Haoyan, please go back first and come back another day. Lu Hong said with a smile, How dare you? He really thinks he's a big shot. Tell him to come out immediately and kneel to greet your highness. The 4 guards flew into a rage. The first prince had lowered himself and came to visit in person, but he was rejected at the door. This was simply too much. Kneel to greet? Lu Hong raised her beautiful eyebrows. Ouch! Fatso shouted and walked to Lu Hong's side with his head held high. He glanced at the 4 guards and said disdainfully, Fat Lord, I was wondering who it was. So it's just 4 lackeys. Why are you so arrogant? In fact, no one was more arrogant than him now. Who are you talking about? The 4 guards' faces were gloomy. I'm talking about you. Can't you tell? Idiots. Fatso sneered. Clang! The 4 guards drew their swords at the same time. Oh, you want to fight? Come on. Fat Lord is standing here. If Fat Lord hides, he'll be your grandson. Fatso crossed his arms in front of his chest and raised his nose to the sky, showing extreme arrogance. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to kill you. The 4 guards were furious. They raised their swords and slashed at Fatso's head. But at this moment, the first prince took a step forward and gave each of them a loud slap. The 4 guards were stunned on the spot. They were all fighting for the first prince. They thought that the first prince would reward them well, but they didn't expect that they would be slapped in front of everyone. The first prince shouted, What did I teach you? You have to be humble and polite. Don't you remember? Apologize to them now. They were also very angry. Didn't they see Shi Zheng glaring at them from next door? They still dared to fight here. They really didn't know what they were doing. I'm sorry, both of you. It's our fault. Please forgive us. The 4 guards didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly bowed to Fatso and Lin Hao to apologize. Fatso smiled disdainfully and looked at the first prince. He said lightly, Your Highness, even Steward Li didn't see Jiang Laude just now, so we didn't discriminate against anyone. Please go back. In other words, he was saying that even Steward Li couldn't see him, let alone him. If he knew what was good for him, he should get out of here as soon as possible. The first prince grew up in the palace and had experienced a lot of intrigue. How could he not understand? But he didn't get angry. He chuckled and said, Since Brother Jiang is cultivating in seclusion, then let's forget about this matter. But I want to talk to the 2 of you. Do you have time? Fatso and Lu Hong looked at each other with a trace of doubt in their eyes. Lu Hong stepped aside and stretched out her hand. Your Highness, please come in. The first prince smiled and walked into the living room. Lin Hao and the 4 guards were about to follow him in. Bang! Fatso closed the door and shouted, Trash, wait outside. Trash! Lin Hao clenched his hands together with a ferocious look on his face. The first prince smiled bitterly and said, Brother Fatty, Lin Hao is my future brother-in-law. Do you think you can give me some face? Fatso said disdainfully, Tieske Huanyanqing City doesn't know that Lin Yi is not his sister. Lu Hong smiled and said, Your Highness, just say it if you have something to say. A cold light flashed in the depths of the first prince's eyes. He smiled and said, Who do you think has a better future between me and Jiang Haoqian? What do you mean? The two frowned. The first prince said, To be honest, I want you to follow me. As long as you agree, I will let my father personally come forward to reconcile with the Danwang Hall. At that time, you don't have to continue to hide like this. Poach people? Fatso couldn't help but sneer secretly. However, he didn't make a sound and paid attention to the changes in Lu Hong's expression. Lu Hong was also a little surprised, but she didn't show any expression of being moved. After a little hesitation, she smiled and said, Your Highness, I don't believe that a pie will fall from the sky. You are all smart people. The first prince smiled and said, I want you to be undercover around Jiang Haoyan and help me control his whereabouts. Fatso joked, We haven't agreed yet, and you have already told us your purpose. Aren't you too confident? Although Jiang Haoyan is a superb alchemist, he has no background and is not strong. If one day Martial Emperor Hall no longer protects him, will he have a good end? You also know that the Danwang Hall will definitely not let him go. But I am different. I have the entire royal family behind me. Even if I make a big mistake, I will be safe and sound. You too, you're sensible people. I believe you know very well what to choose. The first prince looked at the two confidently. Fatso said, I think your real purpose is to take Jiang Lauda under your command. The first prince was astonished. He shook his head and smiled. Brother Fatty is really smart. That's right, this prince's ultimate goal is him. But you can rest assured that even if Jiang Haotian surrenders to this prince will still regard you highly. Fatso smiled slyly. Then what can you give us? Seeing that Fatty's heart was starting to waver, the crown prince's heart warmed. He smiled. Other than helping you to reconcile your relationship with the Pill Emperor Hall, this Highness also solemnly promises to give each of you 1,000,000 gold coins, as well as a top-tier martial art. 1,000,000? Superior martial skill? Fatso was stunned and sighed. Your Highness is really generous. The first prince smiled. This is the value you deserve. Fuck, Fat Lord can't hold it anymore. Fatso cursed and turned hostile on the spot. He shouted, I said you are fat and you are really arrogant. 1,000,000 gold coins and a superior martial skill. Are you trying to send a beggar away? The first prince's face darkened. Fatso took out the image crystal and threw it on the tea table. He said contemptuously, This is a gift from Jiang Lauda to Fat Lord. How much is it worth? The first prince's eyes widened in disbelief. Surprised by this, Fatso sneered and said to Lu Hong, Let him see it again. Don't you know how to keep a low profile? Lu Hong rolled her eyes at Fatso. But she also took out the image crystal and the superior red fire-colored glass pill that she had not taken yet, because she also couldn't stand the first prince's self-righteous and arrogant face. The first prince was completely dumbfounded. Come. How much are these worth? By the way, there are 4 perfect martial skills, also given by Jiang Lauda. Fat Lord really can't understand. You are a prince. How can you give away 1,000,000 gold coins and superior martial skills? What are you still talking about? This is the value you deserve. Fuck, Fat Lord and Lu Hong are so cheap in your eyes? Originally, Fat Lord didn't want to embarrass you, but you shamelessly came. Tell me, aren't you looking for trouble? Chapter 171. The first prince was embarrassed. He blushed and wished he could find a hole to hide in. He thought that Fatso and Lu Hong were country bumpkins who had not seen much of the world and were easy to bribe. But he never expected that. In the end, he was the one who humiliated himself. He felt like a clown, making a fool of himself in front of the two. I couldn't hold back my temper. Your Highness, I'm very sorry. How about we talk again? Actually, it's not difficult to bribe us. As long as you give us 20 million gold coins each, 2 red fire glaze elixirs, and 3 perfect martial arts techniques, Lu Hong and I will serve you wholeheartedly. Fatso raised the corner of his mouth and laughed. Pretend I didn't say anything, the first prince said, and walked to the door, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. Fatso laughed and said, Your Highness, walk slowly. Be careful not to slip and fall. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. The first prince grumbled, kicked the door open, and strode out. Your Highness, it's bad for your body to be angry. Why don't you stay for a cup of tea? Lu Hong leisurely walked to the door and said with a smile. Crack! The first prince almost fell down. He clenched his hands and said angrily without looking back, Tell Jiang Haoyan to quickly refine the red fire glaze elixir. Lu Hong smiled and said it may depend on his mood. Okay, I will think of a way to make him happy. Let's go. The first prince shouted coldly and went back home with Lin, Hao, and the others. Your Highness, take care. I won't see you off. Fatso waved his hand and said jokingly, By the way, young Master Lin, Jiang allowed to ask Fat Lord to tell you that he wants to thank you and your father for giving him 5 million gold coins. Bastard. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and his eyes were burning with anger. You actually want to bribe Fat Lord? Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? Looking at their backs, Fatso sneered. Lu Hong said, This kind of insufferably arrogant person is indeed disgusting. But this time, we'll have a grudge with the eldest prince. Fatso said disdainfully, What are you afraid of? As long as Jiang Laoda is here, we can rest easy. You're right. Lu Hong nodded. If one day the Martial Emperor Hall no longer protected them, they could just hide in the castle. Who would be able to do anything to them? Therefore, there was no need to worry at all. Qin Feiyang also heard it clearly from inside the castle, but he didn't take it to heart. The next day, Ling Yunfei arrived at the Soothing Lake and brought a piece of news to Qin Feiyang. Elder Wan and the palace master both left the martial imperial palace. As for where it went, no one knew. Qin Feiyang wasn't very concerned about this matter. When he told Ling Yunfei about the pill scripture, Ling Yunfei was also extremely shocked. Obviously, he didn't expect that there was such a treasure hidden at the bottom of the lake. Next, Qin Feiyang went into seclusion. The eldest prince and Lin Hao didn't take any action, but the spies of the major forces lurked around the martial imperial palace all day long like dog-skin plaster. The martial imperial palace had undoubtedly become the focus of the entire Yen city, but as the source, Qin Feiyang, seemed to have disappeared from the world. Since returning to Yen city, he had never appeared in front of anyone. Whether it was the distribution of medicinal pills or others coming to him to refine medicinal pills, it was all handled by Fatso and Lu Hong. Gradually, everyone had the misconception that the 3 words Jiang Haoyan seemed to have already become a legend. After a while, a sensational piece of news spread throughout Yen City. The royal family posted a notice. The adopted daughter of Lin family's Lin Han, Lin Yi, would officially marry the eldest prince 10 days later. It was also on this day. In the castle, Qin Feiyang's finger, which was pressed on the iron-bound book, trembled violently. Immediately after, a dazzling white light rushed out from the iron-bound book, illuminating the entire castle. At the same time, Qin Feiyang's cultivation also soared rapidly. Did it succeed? He was overjoyed. He hurriedly retracted his hand and took 2 steps back. His eyes were full of expectation. Wolf King also got up suddenly and ran to Qin Feiyang's side. He stood up like a human, and his pupils contracted tightly. The white brilliance was from the word return on the iron-bound book. The word return was condensed by true energy. But at this moment, it was like a peerless divine weapon, releasing a vast divine power. Under this divine power, Qin Feiyang and Wolf King actually had the idea of kneeling down and worshipping. Deep in their hearts, a sense of insignificance arose spontaneously. After a few breaths, Qin Feiyang's cultivation stopped at the 9-star martial master. Buzz! It was also at this moment. A sudden change occurred. The white word return actually turned golden. This small space instantly turned into a golden sea. Before the man and wolf could react, yet another strange phenomenon occurred that left them dumbfounded. The golden word return actually left the iron-bound book and gradually rose into the air, emitting tens of thousands of golden rays. The man and wolf could barely open their eyes. Whoosh! The next moment, the word return turned into a stream of light and disappeared between Qin Feiyang's eyebrows. The golden light in the castle also quickly dissipated. Qin Feiyang hurriedly raised his hand and touched the space between his eyebrows. His face was full of surprise. Looking at the iron-bound book again, there was only a blank page left. Wolf King urged, "Little Qin Zi, that word has entered the space between your eyebrows. It must be in your body now. Quickly look for it." All of this was too bizarre. For it was simply a fantasy story. It was very unreal. Qin Feiyang looked inside his body, but he found nothing. Suddenly, he felt that there was something strange in his palm. When he opened his hand to take a look, it immediately burst out a ray of strange light. He saw that there was a golden word, return, in the palms of both hands. Qin Feiyang said, "White-eyed wolf, let's have a try." "Okay." Wolf King roared excitedly, seeming to be even happier than Qin Feiyang. However, it stretched out its paw and gently patted Qin Feiyang's right palm. Qin Feiyang's face darkened, and he said angrily, "Are you tickling me?" Wolf King smiled embarrassedly and said, "I'm just afraid that the power will rebound. Just don't use your full strength." Qin Feiyang was quite speechless. "All right then, Brother Wolf will start." Wolf King gritted its teeth and slammed its paw into Qin Feiyang's palm. Bang! At that moment, it clearly felt that the power that was blasting towards Qin Feiyang, like a torrent, was all reflected back. Immediately after, it was shaken back by that force. It really works. Wolf King was shocked. Qin Feiyang was also stunned, and then he became excited and urged, "Try again with all your strength." Wolf King said angrily, "Do you want Brother Wolf's life?" Qin Feiyang patted its head and laughed. "Be good, you won't die." All right, don't discuss Brother Wolf." Wolf King couldn't help but feel a chill, retreated a few steps, and then rushed towards Qin Feiyang with all its strength, slamming its paw into Qin Feiyang's palm. "Hello!" Wolf King immediately screamed. Its 3-meter-long body was like a meteorite, crashing into the wall behind it. Its paw was also broken. Its skin was torn open and blood was flowing. On the other hand, Qin Feiyang didn't move at all. Damn, so awesome! Qin Feiyang was stunned. It was actually a 100% rebound. Sure enough, it was a taste of his own medicine. If he fought with someone and the other party didn't know in advance, he would definitely suffer a great loss. This was a trump card. After coming back to his senses, he quickly took out a top-grade healing pill and bone replenishing pill, ran to Wolf King and fed it to Wolf King. Wolf King was about to scold him, but suddenly his eyes turned and he laughed. "Little Qin Zi, try and see if you can teach Brother Wolf the returning character formula." Teach? Qin Feiyang was stunned, looked down at his palm and frowned. If he could teach it, he would definitely not be stingy. After all, Wolf King was loyal to him, and he naturally wouldn't forget it if there were benefits. But he didn't understand the returning character formula. How could he teach it? After pondering for a moment, Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I'm afraid not now, but when I figure out the meaning of the returning character formula, I will tell you as soon as possible. Wolf King couldn't help but feel a trace of disappointment in his eyes. Qin Feiyong said with a smile, "Don't be like this. Although I can't teach you the returning character formula, I am sure that I can help you open the first level of the Gate of Potential, the ultimate realm of martial artists." "What?" Wolf King's eyes trembled, and he asked, "Are you serious?" "When have I ever lied to you?" Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes and frowned. "But the premise is that you have to find the medicinal materials." Then he looked at his palm again. The two golden words were really dazzling. He didn't know if they could be hidden. At this point, the word returning suddenly disappeared. "Really?" Qin Feiyong was startled, and with a thought, the word returning appeared once again. Wolf King was curious and said, "Brother Wolf, why do you feel that the returning character formula is not some kind of divine art, but more like a divine weapon?" "I have the same feeling." Qin Feiyong nodded his head, seemingly deep in thought, then laughed and said, "It doesn't matter, as long as I can use the returning character formula." After hiding the word returning, he turned around and walked to the front of the iron book. He tried to flip to the second page, but he couldn't. "Looks like I really have to wait until I break through to the War King realm. The returning character formula is already so powerful. This second divine art is really something to look forward to." Qin Feiyong muttered, then closed the iron book, closed the iron box, and left the castle. In the living room, it was empty. Qin Feiyong shouted towards the second floor, "Fatso, Lu Hong, come down for a moment." Soon, Fatso and Yi Zichen ran downstairs. Qin Feiyong asked, "How are you finding the potential pill's medicinal ingredients?" "Ask Manager Li directly." Fatso took out the image crystal stone, and after activating it with the true qi, Manager Li's shadow quickly appeared. Manager Li said in surprise, "Yo, isn't this Brother Jiang? What kind of wind is blowing today? You actually took the initiative to look for me. Senior, can we still have fun together?" Qin Feiyong said helplessly. "Sure, tell me, why are you looking for me?" Manager Li laughed. "Have you found all the medicinal ingredients?" Qin Feiyong asked. "This old man is worried about this. 33 medicinal ingredients. This old man has already found 30 of them. There's still 3 missing. They're the blood ginseng, snow crystal, and 9 suns flower. However, this old man has already found out about the blood ginseng. Only the snow crystal and the 9 suns flower. Until now, there has been no news at all." Chapter 172. Snow, Crystal, 9 Suns Flower. Qin Feiyong pondered for a moment, looked at Manager Li's shadow, and asked, "Have you searched other places?" "I've already ordered the treasure pavilions in the major cities to search with all their might. If we have more time, we should be able to find the snow, crystal, and 9 suns flower. Brother Jiang, you're in such a hurry to get these herbs. What kind of pills are you trying to refine?" Manager Li looked at him in confusion. "This is a secret for now." Qin Feiyong smiled. Manager Li rolled his eyes, acting so mysteriously. He wanted to see what this brat had up his sleeves. Qin Feiyong asked, "Have you asked the royal family, the Danwang Hall, the Martial Imperial Hall, and the Lin family?" "This old man will have to go to those forces personally, but I've been too busy recently, so I haven't been there. I'm going to visit them one by one in the next few days. But some time ago, Jia He came to the treasure pavilion." Manager Li stopped abruptly, and there was a trace of anger on his old face. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyong frowned. Manager Li said, "To be honest, the blood ginseng is in Jia He's hands." Qin Feiyong suddenly stood up, his eyes shining. "Jia He has 3 blood ginseng, but he wants 3 supreme-grade red fire-colored glass pills before he's willing to exchange with me. Although the blood ginseng is precious, it's not worth that price." He's obviously taking advantage of the situation. Manager Li was a little indignant at the end. 3 ginseng. Qin Feiyong was refreshed. Lu Hong was puzzled. Senior, Jia He is a combat emperor, and supreme-grade red fire-colored glass pills are useless to him. What does he want to do? Manager Li said. Do you remember the person called Shuiyang? The 3 nodded. How could they forget about that idiot? Steward Li said. Last month, Shuiyang became his personal disciple. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, in other words, Jia He wants a top-grade crimson fire-colored glass pill in order to fulfill Shuiyang's wish. That's right. The other 2 were said to be the first prince's wedding gift. Manager Li nodded. Fatso sneered. Old Jia, are you blind? Don't you know that Shuiyang is a pig? Fatso, your mouth is still so annoying. Manager Li laughed and scolded. He shook his head and said, but this is his business. It's none of our business. The most important thing now is to quickly think of a way to get the blood ginseng. Qin Feiyong returned to his seat. He lowered his head and muttered to himself, give him the medicinal pills. What? Manager Li's gaze trembled and he said with a frown, this old man knows that you still have superior-grade crimson fire-colored glass pills. But you can't squander them like this either. Although the superior-grade crimson fire-colored glass pill is precious, I have already taken it. There's no point in keeping it. It's better to exchange it for something valuable. However, it's definitely impossible to give him 3. At most, I can give him 2. Also, you can't say that I want it. Otherwise, even if you give him 10, he may not exchange it. Qin Feiyong laughed. You don't need to remind me. This old man knows. Manager Li rolled his eyes at him and asked, are you sure? I'm sure. Qin Feiyong nodded. All right, this old man will go and talk to him now. You can ask Old Man Wan and the others. Anyway, you're also in the Martial Imperial Hall. This old man won't make this trip. Manager Li said. All right. Qin Feiyong stood up and cupped his hands. I hope that Senior can make a trip to the royal family and the Lin family immediately, because I really need those medicinal herbs right now. Manager Li looked at him suspiciously and said, all right, this old man will arrange it. Then, the shadow disappeared. There are still 10 days before Yi's wedding day. You have to hurry up. Qin Feiyong let out a long breath and walked out of the pavilion. A moment later, he came to the entrance of the law enforcement hall and shouted, Elder Ji, Junior Jiang Haotian requests an audience. Come up yourself. Not long later, the beautiful woman's voice came from the 2nd floor. Qin Feiyong walked up to the 2nd floor, looked around, and saw a door that was only half closed. He walked over and saw Elder Ji sitting at the desk, writing something with his head lowered. He pushed the door open and walked in. What's the matter? Elder Ji raised his head and looked at him, then lowered his head and continued to write. Qin Feiyong stopped in front of the desk and said, Junior would like to ask, does the Martial Imperial Hall have blood ginseng, snow crystal, and 9 suns flower? Let me think. Elder Ji stopped writing, thought for a while, and said, Yes, 2 blood ginseng, 2 snow crystals. Why? What do you want? 2 snow crystals. Qin Feiyong's heart suddenly burned. He tried his best to control himself and not show it. He nodded and said, Yes, Elder Ji can name a price. Elder Ji smiled. I'm afraid that you can't afford the price I name. Qin Feiyong asked carefully, Elder, you won't ask for too much, right? I want you to join the Martial Imperial Hall. Are you willing? Elder Ji said with a look of anticipation in his eyes. Qin Feiyong's heart sank. He really didn't expect Elder Ji to name such a price. However, these 3 medicinal herbs were very important to him. Elder Ji said again, If you agree, I'll give them to you for free. Now, Qin Feiyong began to regret. He should have let Steward Li do it. This way, Elder Ji couldn't find a reason to restrain him. How about this? On the day of the first prince's wedding, if Elder still invites me to join the Martial Imperial Hall, I will definitely not refuse. After thinking about it, Qin Feiyang could only think of this method. Really? Elder Ji immediately became spirited. Yes, Qin Feiyang nodded. 10 days later, he would announce his true identity in front of everyone in Yen City. At that time, he wasn't sure how the Martial Imperial Hall would treat him. All right, wait here. I'll go get you the blood ginseng and snow crystals right away. Elder Ji stood up and quickly walked out of the room. In her opinion, Qin Feiyang joining the Martial Imperial Hall was already a done deal. If we add the 3 blood ginseng in Jiahei's hands, then we have 5 blood ginseng and 2 snow crystals. As long as I find 2 more 9 Suns flowers, I can refine 2 potential pills. Qin Feiyang was excited just thinking about it. Suddenly, he noticed a blood-colored token on the desk. It was the blood slaughter token. Reaching out to grab it, he looked at it carefully. The beautiful woman quickly returned with 2 jade boxes in her hands. She placed them on the desk and smiled. These are what you want. I've taken a look. They are even rarer than the scarlet glass tree. I've paid such a huge price. Don't go back on your words when the time comes. Do I dare? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and opened the first jade box. Rays of blood-colored light bloomed. Within the blood-colored light, there were 2 medicinal herbs lying quietly. It was half the length of a chopstick, and its shape was similar to ginseng and fire ginseng. However, its entire body was blood red, as if it had just been soaked in blood, giving off a terrifying feeling. It was the blood ginseng. Qin Feiyang suppressed the excitement in his heart and opened the other jade box. A gust of cold air suddenly hit him in the face. 2 extremely thin pieces of ice were placed within the jade box, and they were completely crystalline and translucent, and they emanated expanses of pure white, icy mist. These were snow crystals. In fact, they were also ice cubes. But unlike ordinary ice cubes, snow crystals were born in extremely cold places and gradually condensed from cold air. The process would take at least more than 10 years. Although they were also ice, they would not melt as long as they were sealed well and were not exposed to the scorching sun. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Qin Feiyang closed the lid of the box quietly and kept it in his Qingquan bag. Immediately after, he looked down at the blood-killing token in his hands and frowned. Elder Ji, it has been so long. Haven't you found out its origin? Elder Ji sighed. There are no clues at all. How can we find out? Qin Feiyang placed the blood-killing token on the table and smiled. Remember to tell me when you find out. Yes. Elder Ji nodded. I'll take my leave then. Qin Feiyang cupped his fists and turned to leave. Elder Ji's eyes flickered as he asked, "The royal family is preparing to hold a competition. Are you interested in participating?" Competition? Qin Feiyang raised his brows. Isn't the first prince getting married? Therefore, the king of Yen ordered to hold a competition for young people. The top 10 people will compete on the day of the first prince's wedding in front of all the big shots in Yen City. The top 3 people will receive generous rewards and can also participate in the royal banquet that night. For ordinary people, this is also a kind of glory. The registration will start tomorrow. Elder Ji smiled. Glory? Qin Feiyang sneered and turned to look at Elder Ji. He grinned and said, I want to join in the fun at the royal banquet. Will they reject me? Elder Ji was stunned and then shook his head and laughed. Indeed, with his alchemy skills, the royal family would love for him to go. In the eyes of the royal family, he might even be more important than her, the law enforcement elder. There was indeed no need for him to participate in such a boring competition. She waved her hand and said, Go back. If you want to leave the Martial Imperial Hall, report to me first. Okay. Qin Feiyang agreed readily and left the law enforcement hall quickly. He stood on a winding path with a face full of excitement. He had effortlessly obtained 4 stalks of such precious medicinal herbs. It seemed that even the heavens were helping him. Jiang Laoda! At this moment, a familiar shout rang out. Qin Feiyang looked in the direction of the voice and saw Fatso running over. He asked in confusion, "What are you doing here?" Fatso chuckled. "Steward, Li just sent me a message saying that Jia He agreed and even obtained a 9 Suns flower from old dog He." 9 Suns flower! That's great. Qin Feiyang was extremely excited. In this way, he finally gathered the herbs for the first set of potential elixir. He really did not expect that it was Elder He who helped him so much. If those 2 old dogs know that Steward Li bought the 9 Suns flower and blood ginseng for you, they will definitely be furious. Fatso laughed sinisterly. This is nothing. When they find out the power of the potential elixir, they will definitely vomit blood on the spot. Qin Feiyang sneered. Vomit blood? Fatso was shocked. He hugged Qin Feiyang's arm and begged, "Boss, just tell Fat Lord what kind of magical effect the potential elixir has. If I tell you now, there won't be any surprises. Just wait." Qin Feiyang patted his shoulder and turned to walk towards the tranquil lake. Buzz. At this moment, Chapter 173. Fatso took out the image crystal, and Manager Li's shadow immediately appeared. "Is there any good news?" Fatso chuckled. "It is indeed good news." Manager Li nodded and asked, "Where's Jiang Haotian?" "Boss, wait a moment. Manager Li is looking for you." Fatso quickly grabbed the image crystal and chased after Qin Feiyang. After catching up, Qin Feiyang looked at the shadow and smiled. "Senior, what's the matter?" Manager Li said, "Brother Jiang, just now my subordinates came to tell this old man that they found a 9 Suns flower somewhere." "Where is it?" Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. "Black Bear City," Manager Li said. "Black Bear City?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fatso was also a little stunned. "Are you surprised? It is said that the 9 Suns flower is in the deepest part of Black Bear Mountain." Manager Li laughed. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was not a normal surprise, but a very unexpected one. He asked, "Senior, are you sure it's Black Bear Mountain?" "I'm sure." Manager Li nodded. Qin Feiyang asked, "Then when can the people from Black Bear City's treasure pavilion send it over?" Manager Li thought for a moment. "It is said that there is a Black Bear King in Black Bear Mountain, and it is quite strong. This old man has to send someone over, and it should take a day." Qin Feiyang nodded and cupped his hands. "Senior, please don't hurt the Black Bear King." Manager Li asked, "Why? Do you know it?" "Yes, it saved my life." "Forget it, I'll go too." Qin Feiyang was a little worried, because he understood the temper of the Black Bear Mountain. If there was a disagreement and he fought with the people of Treasure Pavilion, he would feel guilty if anything happened. Moreover, he had another very important thing to do. This matter could directly affect the situation 10 days later. "All right, be careful. This old man will go to the Lin family and the royal family to take a look." Manager Li laughed. For the sake of a ferocious beast, he had even made a personal trip. This kid was also a loyal and righteous person. What he didn't know was that the Black Bear King had saved Qin Feiyang not just once, but several times. Qin Feiyang would never forget this kindness for the rest of his life. After turning off the image crystal, Qin Feiyang returned to the law enforcement hall and explained the matter to the beautiful woman. "No way." The beautiful woman didn't even think about it before replying coldly, "Elder, this junior must make this trip." Qin Feiyang's attitude was also very firm. "Just for a ferocious beast and a medicinal herb?" The beautiful woman frowned. Qin Feiyang said, "Not entirely. There are also some personal matters. I don't know what to do with you. I'm not against it, but you'll have to wait a little longer. Elder Wan and the Hall Master should be back soon. When the time comes, I'll have Elder One accompany you. Looking at the stubborn Qin Feiyang, the beautiful woman felt helpless. Qin Feiyang said, "There's no need for that. Elder sure can go with me. If you're still worried, we can disguise ourselves." "That's fine too. Shi Zheng is a 9-star battle king. He's enough to protect you in a place like Black Bear City. But you can't reveal your true identity. Jia He and Elder He have already lost their minds. The 2 battle kings who attacked Fatso and Lu Hong last time are the deacon elders of the Danwang Hall. If they know that you're going to Black Bear City, they'll definitely kill you." The beautiful woman warned with a serious face. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and asked in confusion, "Since we already know their identities, why don't we take them down? After all, they killed people on the street and violated Yen City's rules." The beautiful woman sneered, "If we don't catch them at the scene, who dares to go to the Danwang Hall? In short, strength is the way of the king." It was a realistic question, but this world was always so realistic. Instead of blaming the heavens and blaming others, it was better to put in more effort and cultivate diligently. After bidding farewell to the beautiful woman, Qin Feiyang returned to the soothing lake and briefed Shi Zheng. Then the 2 took the phantom elixir, changed their appearances, and left the martial imperial hall. None of the spies hiding outside the gate noticed anything. This was the magic of the phantom elixir. After leaving Yen City, Elder Shi brought Qin Feiyang and rushed to Black Bear City. Noon. The 2 finally entered Black Bear City. A few months passed. Black Bear City didn't change much. The Jiang family was still the dominant family. It would take a lot of effort for the other small families to rise. Treasure Pavilion. VIP room. Qin Feiyang and Shi Zheng sat at the tea table. Beside them was a man in purple who was serving them. It was the pavilion master of Black Bear City's Treasure Pavilion. He poured tea and asked, "May I know your names? What business do you have with this pay?" Qin Feiyang said 9 Suns Flower. The pavilion master's eyes narrowed. Qin Feiyang smiled. "Don't be nervous. This news was told to me by Manager Li. You're from Yen City." The pavilion master suddenly raised his head and looked at the 2 in surprise. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. "Pavilion master Pei, we're in a hurry. Let's not drink tea. Just tell us the location of the 9 Suns Flower." The pavilion master looked at the 2 in silence with a trace of vigilance. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. "We really don't have any bad intentions. If you don't believe me, you can ask Manager Li. Wait a moment, I'll be back soon." The pavilion master got up and walked out of the VIP room. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly at Shi Zheng. Without a doubt, he must have confirmed with Manager Li. After a while, the pavilion master strode back to the VIP room. He cupped his hands and smiled. "I've offended you earlier. Please forgive me." "It's okay." Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "Can you tell us now?" The pavilion master said, "The 9 Suns Flower is in the canyon where the Black Bear King lives. I went there once, but was chased out by it." "Canyon?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He had also been to the canyon, but he didn't see any 9 Suns Flower. Right. When he went there that day, it was midnight and he was still unconscious. When he left the canyon, he didn't pay much attention to it. The pavilion master smiled and said, "Steward Li has instructed me to take you there. Do you plan to go now or take a rest first?" Qin Feiyang said, "Of course now." After obtaining this 9 Suns Flower, he had gathered 2 sets of medicinal ingredients. He and Wolf King could have 1 potential pill each. Therefore, there must be no mistakes. The 3 of them got up and left the treasure pavilion. When they passed by the entrance of the pill hall, Qin Feiyang stopped. The figures of Luo Xiong, Elder Amo, and Feng Cheng appeared in his mind. "Let's go," Shi Zheng urged. He could guess what Qin Feiyang was thinking. However, it was obvious that they couldn't go to the pill hall now. Qin Feiyang sighed inwardly and left quickly. When he returned from the Black Bear Mountain, he would find a chance to thank Luo Xiong and Elder Mo. In less than an hour, the three of them arrived at the canyon. "Follow me," the pavilion master called out and entered the canyon leading the way. Along the way, the three of them saw many bear paw prints. After a few hundred meters, the pavilion master stopped beside a rock and pointed upwards. He smiled and said, "It's there." Qin Feiyang raised his head to look. Sure enough, he saw a blooming flower on the cliff. It was the size of a palm and grew between the cracks of the rocks. There were a total of 9 petals. Each petal was red like fire and looked like a small sun. It was extremely dazzling. Roar! Bang, bang, bang! It was also at this moment. Accompanied by a deafening roar, the ground shook. In the depths of the canyon, a huge monster rushed over with a ferocious aura. If it wasn't the Black Bear King, who else could it be? Shi Zheng immediately protected Qin Feiyang behind him. The pavilion master also retreated behind Shi Zheng. However, he didn't look at the Black Bear King. Instead, he looked at Qin Feiyang's back. His eyes were filled with doubt. What was the background of this person? Not only was there a battle king following him, but even Manager Li had instructed him to take good care of this person. Roar! The Black Bear King ran over and stopped more than 10 meters away. Its huge eyes stared fixedly at the three of them. Qin Feiyang pushed Shi Zheng away and walked to the front. He cupped his hands and smiled. "Senior Bear King, it's been a few months. How have you been?" The Black Bear King was stunned and looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I remember last time it was you who helped me detoxify the poison. That's why I was able to escape. Is that you?" The Black Bear King's doubtful voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded. The Black Bear King said, "Didn't you go to Yen City? Why did you suddenly appear here?" Qin Feiyang pleaded, "I specially rushed over from Yen City for this 9 suns flower. Senior Bear King, please grant me my wish." The Black Bear King looked up at the 9 suns flower and shook his head. "I have a use for this 9 suns flower. I can't give it to you. Hurry and go back." Qin Feiyang panicked and said, "Senior," the Black Bear King shouted. "If I tell you to leave, then leave. Cut the crap." It seemed to be even more anxious than Qin Feiyang. "Something's wrong." Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. An uneasy feeling surged in his heart. With his relationship with the Black Bear King, even if the Black Bear King didn't give him the 9 suns flower, he wouldn't be in such a hurry to chase him away. Shi Zheng asked, "What did it say?" As the Black Bear King was using telepathy, Shi Zheng and the pavilion master did not know what it had said before. Roar! The Black Bear King seemed to have lost its patience as it roared at Qin Feiyang. Immediately, a strong wind blew here. It blew Qin Feiyang's clothes and black hair, making rustling sounds. Humph! Shi Zheng snorted coldly, took a step forward, and his aura erupted. "Elder, wait!" Qin Feiyang quivered and hurriedly grabbed onto Shi Zheng and said in a low voice, "Let me talk to it first." Shi Zheng frowned and took a step back. Qin Feiyang looked at the Black Bear King and said in a deep voice, "Senior Bear King, why is this? Did something happen?" The Black Bear King said, "Don't ask anything. This king will not say anything, and you will never come to Black Bear Mountain again. Leave immediately, the further the better." Qin Feiyang looked at it deeply and nodded. "All right, I'll go." "You're leaving just like that?" The pavilion master and Shi Zheng were somewhat stunned. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang turned around and said to the two of them, then sped towards the exit of the canyon. However, his gaze was exceptionally gloomy. The last words of the Black Bear King contained too much information. On the surface, it was chasing him away, but in reality, it was caring about him. Chapter 174. After Qin Feiyang and the other two left, the Black Bear King also returned to his lair, but he did not enter the cave. He stood outside the cave with an incomparably respectful expression. "Who is it?" A hoarse voice came from within the cave. The Black Bear King said respectfully, "Reporting to my lord, a few fierce beasts accidentally barged in. I have already chased them away. Guard outside well. Don't let any fierce beasts disturb me. Otherwise, I will send you to hell and reunite with your child." The hoarse voice said in a sinister voice, and then fell silent. Outside the cave, the Black Bear King's huge body suddenly trembled. He turned around and looked into the distance, his eyes filled with grief and anger. Outside the canyon, Qin Feiyang stood at the top of a big tree, looking into the depths of the canyon, his eyes flickering. Below, Shi Zhang and the pavilion master both had suspicious looks on their faces. "Bear King has saved me many times. I can't just sit back and do nothing. I must investigate this thoroughly." Gradually, Qin Feiyang's gaze became firm. He jumped down and landed in front of Shi Zhang and the other two. He smiled and said, "You too, I still have some things to take care of. You two can return to Black Bear City first." The pavilion master nodded. He was only here to lead the way. Since the other party already knew the location of the Nine Suns flower, there was indeed no need to continue staying. No, however, Shi Zhang shook his head without hesitation. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, "Elder, I know you are concerned about me, but please believe me, I will be fine." "No matter what you say, no," Shi Zhang said stubbornly. Qin Feiyang was a little helpless. Didn't this person know how to be flexible? He pulled Shi Zhang to the side and said in a low voice, "Elder, you also know that I have an ancient castle to hide in. Even if I face the War Emperor, I can protect myself. Moreover, I am very familiar with the Black Bear Mountain. There definitely won't be any problems. Just wait for me in Black Bear City. I'll look for you as soon as I'm done. Please." Qin Feiyang looked at him pleadingly. "What exactly do you want to do?" Shi Zhang frowned. "Some private matters." Qin Feiyang smiled. Shi Zhang sighed helplessly and nodded. "All right, but you must be careful. If anything happens to you, Elder Ji will skin me alive." "Thank you, Elder." Qin Feiyang was delighted. It really wasn't an easy task to convince this honest man. Shi Zhang rolled his eyes at him and turned to leave with the pavilion master. Actually, letting Shi Zhang leave was also for Shi Zhang's safety. He had an uneasy premonition in his heart. If he really encountered any danger, he could hide in the castle, but Shi Zhang would be in danger. Because Wolf King was in the castle, he couldn't let Shi Zhang in. "Who?" After letting out a long sigh, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and Wolf King appeared out of thin air. As soon as it came out, it asked, "What happened to the black bear?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said in a deep voice, "Let's go and take a look, but we can't go directly. Let's go to the back of the canyon first, then we can discuss." "Okay." Wolf King nodded. The man and wolf ran at full speed in the forest. Along the way, they tried their best to avoid the ferocious beasts. When they encountered creatures like poisonous insects that ambushed them, they quickly got rid of them. Even so, by the time they reached the back of the canyon, their bodies were already covered in wounds. However, because they were worried about the black bear, they didn't pay much attention to their injuries. After taking the healing pill, the man and wolf looked up at the mountain in front of them. Wolf King smiled slyly. "The black bear's lair is on the other side of the mountain. Why don't we dig a hole here? We might just be able to reach the black bear's treasure trove." Qin Feiyang's face twitched. This bastard, was he worried about the black bear or the black bear's treasure trove? Cough, cough. The Wolf King coughed dryly and said somewhat guiltily, "Brother Wolf is a loyal wolf. Don't get the wrong idea." "Who are you trying to fool?" Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes and quietly climbed to the top of the mountain. A few hundred breaths later, the man and wolf finally climbed to the top of the mountain. However, due to the lush vegetation, they were unable to see the situation below the canyon. Qin Feiyong glanced ahead, pointed to a mountain on the left, and said, "Let's go there. We can see the black bear's lair." After another few hundred breaths, the man and wolf arrived at the top of the mountain. They hid in a patch of grass and looked down. At that moment, they saw the Black Bear King sitting in front of the cave entrance, looking as if he had lost his soul. Wolf King said, "Something is indeed wrong. Let's go down and ask." "Don't worry." Qin Feiyong pressed it down and said in a deep voice, "I keep feeling uneasy. Let's take a look at the situation first." Suddenly, he noticed that on the right side of the cave entrance there was a mound of dirt. It was a few meters tall and overgrown with weeds. "That's not right." He frowned and asked, "White-eyed Wolf, was there a mound of dirt there before?" Wolf King looked over and shook his head. "Brother Wolf is very familiar with this place. I can tell you very responsibly that there definitely wasn't one before. Looking at the weeds on it, it should have been piled up a few months ago." "Strange. Why would the Black Bear King build such a mound of dirt?" Qin Feiyong frowned. Wolf King sniffed with his nose. His pupils suddenly constricted and exclaimed, "There's someone down there!" "Someone?" Qin Feiyong's face changed. Could it be that Shizheng had returned? Wolf King said in a deep voice, "That's right, there are 3 unfamiliar smells." Qin Feiyong heaved a sigh of relief. 3 smells. Then it couldn't be Shizheng. He couldn't help but become vigilant as he carefully scanned the area below. But other than the Black Bear King, there was no one else. Could it be in the cave? He couldn't help but look at the entrance of the cave, but he couldn't see the situation inside. 1 man and 1 wolf lay in the grass, motionless, waiting until it was dark. When the sky turned dark, a fire appeared in the cave. But the Black Bear King was outside the cave the whole day, so it couldn't be the Black Bear King who started the fire. "Sure enough, there's someone here," Qin Feiyong muttered. He looked up at the sky. The bright moon hung in the sky, and the stars twinkled. A night like this should give people a sense of tranquility. But Qin Feiyong's heart was extremely irritated at this moment. In the middle of the night, "Beast, go and find some firewood." A cold voice suddenly sounded in the cave. This voice, Qin Feiyong looked at the cave, his eyes full of surprise. "It's Lin Chin." Wolf King pondered for a moment, and suddenly a low voice resounded in Qin Feiyong's mind. "That's right, it's him." Qin Feiyong's body and mind trembled, and his eyes shone brightly. But then his face turned pale again. If Lin Chen was here, it meant that Zuo must be here too. Everyone thought that after Zuo An's whereabouts were exposed and he stole the alchemy fire from the pill hall, he would definitely leave the Black Bear City, or even the county of Yan. Qin Feiyong had always thought so too. But he didn't expect that Zuo was hiding in the Black Bear Mountain. Sure enough, the most dangerous place was the safest place. If it wasn't for the 9 Suns flower, no one would know even if Zuo hid here for the rest of his life. The Black Bear King went to find a few dead wood and entered the cave. But soon he came out again and stood guard outside. Qin Feiyong glanced at the cave and then looked at the Black Bear King. He then brought Wolf King to the castle. Wolf King said anxiously, "Little Qinzi, what should we do? Zuo is so powerful. How can we save the Black Bear King? And Fengcheng is probably in the cave too." Qin Feiyong lowered his head and pondered. The Black Bear King's body was too big to bring him to the castle. The only way was to let Zuo leave the Black Bear Mountain. But it was impossible. "Have you thought of a way? If Zuo loots the treasure trove, everything will be over." "Ah, it was a slip of the tongue. Don't misunderstand, Brother Wolf is really worried about the Black Bear King." In a moment of desperation, Wolf King let it slip. When he realized it, he quickly explained. But no matter how he explained, Qin Feiyang would not believe him. This white-eyed wolf was really only concerned about the treasure trove. Wolf King said, "You have to believe in Brother Wolf. Although Brother Wolf is concerned about the treasure trove, he is more concerned about the Black Bear King. That's enough." Qin Feiyang glared at him fiercely. He pondered for a moment, and the corners of his mouth gradually pursed into a cold smile. Today is different from the past. Now that we have the image crystal, we can catch them all in one fell swoop. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out the image crystal and quickly became excited. Soon, Fatso's shadow appeared. "Jiang Laoda, what are you doing? Have you found the 9 Suns flower?" Fatso half reclined on the chair with his legs crossed, looking leisurely. Qin Feiyang said, "Go to Elder Ji immediately and tell her that I have found Zhua and's whereabouts." Fatso was so frightened that he immediately flipped over from the chair. He hurriedly got up in a hurry and shouted angrily, "What did you say? You found Zhuan?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Okay, just you wait. Fat Lord will go to Elder Ji immediately." After Fatso turned off the image crystal, he hurriedly ran out of the attic. Lu Hong walked out of the room and stood on the balcony. She asked Fatso what happened. "Zhuan has appeared," Fatso shouted without looking back. Lu Hong's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. She hurriedly leaped down and chased after the fatty. In the law enforcement hall, Fatso did not knock on the door and directly barged into the beautiful woman's lounge. The beautiful woman frowned and said angrily, "What are you doing?" Fatso said anxiously, "Elder, something bad has happened. Jiang Laoda has encountered Zhua, and what?" Elder Ji suddenly got up and landed in front of Fatso. She said angrily, "How is he now?" "He seems to be fine." Fatso shook his head in panic. Elder Ji said, "Quickly contact him. I want to ask him in person." Okay. Fatso activated the image crystal. When Qin Feiyang's shadow appeared, the beautiful woman asked anxiously, "Where is Zhuan? Are you okay?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "Zhuan is at Black Bear Mountain. He has not found me yet." Wolf King hid in a corner to avoid being seen by the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I will inform the temple master immediately. You must be careful. Do not let him find you. This time, no matter what, we must not let this old fox escape. We will contact you again when we reach Black Bear City." Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Chirp. As soon as the image crystal was turned off, the loud cry of an eagle could be heard in the castle. Chapter 175. Why is there an eagle's cry? Qin Feiyang left the castle with Wolf King. He quickly lay down in grass and looked at the valley. Then Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Above the cave, a huge falcon was circling in the air. There were at least 20 people in its 2 huge claws. Those people were all dead. Below the falcon stood a young man. It was Lin Chin. He glanced at the people in the falcon's claws and smiled at the falcon. "These are a good harvest. I can refine more than 20 blood evil pills." The falcon's eyes flashed with a sharp light. The falcon loosened its claws. More than 20 corpses fell to the ground in front of Lin Chin with loud thuds. Lin Chin shouted, "Black Bear King, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and move them in." There was a trace of reluctance in the Black Bear King's huge eyes, but there was no other way. He had to do it. Lin Chin looked at it with disdain. He raised his head to look at Falcon and said, "Master has instructed us to capture more people tomorrow. As usual, do not hunt in Black Bear Mountain to avoid arousing suspicion." Chirp! The falcon let out a sharp cry, flapped its black wings, and rushed out of the valley. At the same time, a man and a wolf also entered the castle. After the falcon left, Qin Feiyang and Wolf King appeared again. These two bastards really used people to refine pills. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. His eyes were full of murderous intent. He was not against killing people. After all, this was the law of survival. But using people to refine pills was simply inhumane. Such people could not be appeased even if they were cut into pieces. Wolf King said in a low voice, "Little Qinzi, calm down. Don't alert the enemy." This was a good opportunity. There could not be any accidents. Otherwise, if Zuoyan escaped, he did not know when he would be able to find him again. This point, Qin Feiyang also knew very well, so he suppressed the anger in his heart. Time flew. It was almost dawn, but there was still no news. What are they doing? Qin Feiyang frowned. It had already been an entire night. With the speed of the martial King Hallmaster and the others, they should have arrived by now. The morning sun rose. All things were awakening. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's imaging crystal finally reacted. Continue monitoring. Call me if you need anything. After instructing Wolf King, he entered the castle and took out the image crystal. Rays of light were emitted. Fatso's phantom appeared. Qin Feiyang said angrily, "Fatso, what are they doing? Why aren't you here yet?" Fatso said, coming, "We are now in the forest in front of the canyon. Come over quickly." Jungle? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He frowned and asked, "Then what are you doing here?" "There's no other way. Ling Yunfei needs to cultivate, and Lu Hong doesn't want to come. We can only sacrifice Fat Lord this time." Fatty had a helpless expression on his face. Qin Feiyang thought about it carefully and understood. Only Ling Yunfei, Lu Hong, and Fatso had established a contract bridge with him. If the giants of the county of Yen wanted to contact him, they had to go through one of them. "I won't go over. You guys go around to the back of the canyon. I'll wait for you here. Remember, don't make any noise. Also, restrain your aura," Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. "Okay." Fatso nodded. After turning off the imaging crystal, Qin Feiyang took an illusion form elixir and turned into Zhang Haotian's appearance. Then he left the castle, sent Wolf King into the castle, and ran to the foot of the mountain. In less than 100 breaths, 6 figures entered his sight. 2 of them were Fatso and Shizhang. Shizhang had also recovered his true appearance. Qin Feiyang had seen the martial arts hall master before, so he could naturally recognize him. As for the other 3, they all looked middle-aged. Although they had retracted their aura, one could tell at a glance that the 3 of them were not simple people, because their aura was too outstanding. His gaze was also extremely sharp, like the edge of a blade. A group of people walked over silently. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, seniors. Zhang Haotian, although I've been in Xingyue City, I've heard rumors about you every day. I've always been curious if you have 3 heads and 6 arms. But today, I see that you're no different from an ordinary person." The person who spoke was Luo Qingzhu's father, Jiang Xingyi. He was about 185 meters tall and slightly thin. He wore a fitted white robe, and there were spots of white hair at his temples. On his weathered face, there was an easygoing smile. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and said, "Senior Jiang, these are all rumors. You can't take them seriously. Among the 4 giants of the county of Yen, only the chief pavilion master was in Xingyue City. So, even if no one introduced him, he knew." Rumors? Jiang Jingyi was stunned. He shook his head and laughed. Qin Feiyang looked at the last person and cupped his hands. "Senior, you must be the king of Yen." This person had a strong body. He wore a golden robe and a crown on his head. He exuded the aura of a king from head to toe. He was no stranger to this aura of a king. Moreover, only the county kings of the 18 counties were qualified to wear a crown. The king of Yen nodded and smiled faintly. "Little brother, you've done a great job this time. When we catch Swan, I'll reward you handsomely. Thank you, King of Yen. Qin Feiyong thanked him and looked at the last person. This person was tall and straight. His eyebrows were as sharp as swords. There was no expression on his face, and he looked extremely cold. There was no doubt that this person was the hall master of the Danwang Hall. Greetings, senior. He bowed politely. The hall master of the Danwang Hall only nodded faintly. Qin Feiyong was too lazy to ask for a rebuff. He glanced at the four giants and said, Zuan is on the other side of the mountain. Other than Elder Feng, the Black Bear King is also in his hands. I would like to ask the four of you to save them first before dealing with Zua, and the hall master of the Danwang Hall immediately said, I don't agree. What if Zua escapes while we're saving them? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and asked, Senior, are you saying that you're going to sacrifice them? For the sake of the big picture, we can only sacrifice them. As the law-enforcing elder of the Pill Hall in Black Bear City, I believe that Feng Qing is prepared to die. The hall master of the Danwang Hall said coldly. Qin Feiyong clenched his fists and said, Senior, if I may offend you, Elder Feng is not your slave. Why should he be sacrificed? Is this what you should say as the hall master of the Grand Hall Master? The hall master of the Danwang Hall raised his eyebrows and said faintly, This is the business of the Danwang Hall. Is it your business? Qin Feiyong said, Indeed, it's none of my business. However, I owe Elder Feng and the Black Bear King a debt of gratitude, even if I'm insignificant in front of you. I thought you didn't know your place. The hall master of the Danwang Hall said faintly. Qin Feiyong stared at him. His fists clenched tighter and tighter. Birds of a feather flocked together. He was the same as Jia He and Elder He. Such a person in the Danwang Hall. It's disgusting. All right, if you really want to sacrifice them, I don't have any objections. However, I'm afraid it's wishful thinking for you to catch Zua today. Qin Feiyong's face darkened. There was a trace of madness in his eyes. What are you trying to do? Do you believe that I won't kill you right now? The hall master of the Danwang Hall narrowed his eyes. There was a dangerous signal in his eyes. To be honest, I'm not afraid of you. Qin Feiyong sneered. All right, let's not talk too much. Ma Cheng, you are really something. No matter what, you are someone with status. How can you be so calculative with a member of the younger generation? Jiang Haotian is right. As the hall master of the Danwang Hall, you shouldn't have said such words. Seeing that the two were about to fall out, the people of Theta Wang Hall hurriedly tried to calm them down. The hall master of the Martial King Hall looked at Qin Feiyong and comforted him. Don't worry. Feng Qing is also Feng Ling Heir's grandfather. I won't leave him in the lurch. Thank you, Senior. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands and thanked the hall master. He then looked at Ma Cheng and shook his head. This is the difference between people. Senior Ma Cheng, how can you accept this? A cold light flashed in the depths of Ma Cheng's eyes. The hall master of the Martial King Hall frowned and reprimanded. Little brat, stop talking. Qin Feiyong also knew when to stop. If they continued, Ma Cheng would definitely go crazy. King of Yen said, Bring us up first. Qin Feiyong said, To be honest, I've already thought of a plan. Tell me about it. Jiang Jingyi looked at him with good intentions. Lure the snake out of its hole. As long as we make some noise here, Zuoan will definitely come to check it out. At that time, you guys will hold him back while Elder Shi and I will go to save Feng Ling Heir. If Zuoan doesn't come and only sends Lin Qin, it's fine too. We can capture him and interrogate him about the situation in the cave. As long as we know the situation inside, it won't be difficult to save Senior Feng. Qin Feiyong said. He had been thinking about it for the whole night. This was the most reliable method. Shi Zhang asked, What if he sends the Black Bear King to check it out? It's naturally better if the Black Bear King comes. The reason why he didn't tell me the truth yesterday must be that he was worried that I would be implicated. But now that you guys are here, the situation is different. There's nothing for him to worry about. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The hallmaster of the martial king Hall pondered for a moment and looked at Jiang Jingyi and the other two. He said with a smile, I think his idea is feasible. What about you guys? Do you have any objections? No. King of Yen smiled faintly. I have no objections either. Jiang Jingyi said with a smile. He was more and more curious about Qin Feiyang. Only Ma Cheng did not express his opinion. King of Yen patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, What's there to think about? It's settled. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Bring us up. The group of people quietly climbed up the mountain. When they arrived at the top of the mountain, Qin Feiyang pointed down and whispered, Zuan is there. The one squatting at the entrance of the cave is the Black Bear King. Their gazes immediately changed. The hallmaster of the Martial King Hall said in a deep voice, Jiang Haotian, you're the one who made the plan. Hurry up and make the arrangements. We'll listen to you now. Listen to me? Qin Feiyang was stunned and hurriedly said, Thank you, senior. However, before he could make the arrangements, Ma Cheng suddenly roared, Zuan, come out and face your death. Then he jumped and landed down, his aura soaring into the sky. Bastard! Chapter 176. The King of Yen, Jiang Jingyi, and the Martial King Hall Master changed their expressions as well. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was about to rush down, Jiang Jingyi pulled him back and whispered, Don't be rash. Although Ma Cheng is petty, he won't do anything that will ruin the overall situation. The King of Yen nodded. That's right. He might have a better plan. Let's take 2 steps back and not let Zuan notice us. The 3 powerhouses and Shi Zheng retreated and held their breaths, waiting for Ma Cheng's attack. Qin Feiyang and Fatso lay in the bushes, glaring at Ma Cheng. Boss, do you believe him? Fatso asked softly. Qin Feiyang did not reply. His gaze was as sharp as an eagle's and was aggressive. Below, the Black Bear King was the first to get up and looked at Ma Cheng in horror. This was an expert. He was no weaker than the person in the cave. The moment Ma Cheng landed, a black figure darted out of the cave. It was a sinister-looking old man in a black robe. His eyes were sunken and emitted a sinister green light. That's right. He was Zuan. Zuan's pupils constricted when he saw Ma Cheng. He said in shock and anger, How did you find this place? Ma Cheng sneered, It's all thanks to Jiang Haotian. Qin Feiyang, who was lying on the mountaintop, shuddered violently. He turned to look at Theta Wang and the others and said coldly, Is this his plan? Can't you see that he has no intention of saving Feng Cheng and the Black Bear King? The 3 of them frowned as well. At the same time, when he heard Jiang Haotian's name, Zuan's sinister eyes shone with a cold glint. It's that little bastard again. Where is he? He's up there. Ma Cheng pointed to the mountaintop. Ma Cheng, you've gone too far. The Martial King Hall Master shouted angrily and turned into a streak of light, diving towards Zuan. The King of Yen and Jiang Jingyi exchanged glances and darted towards Zuan as well. They planned to capture the leader first. As long as they could capture Zuan, Feng Cheng and the Black Bear King would not be in danger. At the same time, the Black Bear King also ran towards Ma Cheng. It knew what was going on when it heard Jiang Haotian's name. However, Zuan was even faster. When he saw that Theta Wang and the Black Bear King was also here, he caught up to the Black Bear King's tea in a single step. The old hand reached out and grabbed the Black Bear King's thigh. His 5 fingers were like steel needles, instantly sinking into the Black Bear King's flesh. He forcefully lifted it. The Black Bear King roared and its huge body fell down, creating a deep crater in the ground. Watching this scene, Qin Feiyang bared his teeth and cracked his eyes. His body was shivering. Originally, the Black Bear King was not far from Ma Cheng. Ma Cheng could save the Black Bear King before Xuan did. He did not help Black Bear, did not help the help bear help. Qin Feiyang's heart was filled with hatred. If it dares to take another step closer, I will crush its head. At this moment, Xuan stepped on the Black Bear King's head and looked at Theta Wang and the Black Bear King with a sinister smile. Lin Qin, bring that old thing out as well. He shouted coldly again without turning his head. Almost at the next moment, Lin Qin dragged an old man with disheveled hair out of the cave. It was Feng Cheng, but at this moment he was covered in wounds and unconscious. Lin Chen was still quite nervous when he saw the four giants. He hid behind Xuan and did not dare to raise his head. Seeing this, King Yan and the other two frowned. They changed their direction and landed beside Ma Cheng. Jiang Jingyi sighed. Ma Cheng, you shouldn't have done this. Shouldn't have? Ma Cheng was so angry that he laughed. Then I'd like to ask you, why should I listen to the arrangements of a young boy? The Martial King Hall Master said angrily. Don't you know that you have to look at the big picture? Ma Cheng said disdainfully. The big picture? It's ridiculous. With the four of us here, how can he escape? All right, since things have come to this, let's not talk about it anymore. King Yin shouted and looked at Lin Qin gloomily. He said, coldly, as a disciple of the Lin family and a core disciple of the Danwang Hall, how can you be in cahoots with the Devil's Wen? Are you letting down everyone who has trained you? Lin Chen's face turned pale. Xuan grinned. With me here, don't be afraid of them. Stick out your chest. Sooner or later, you will trample them under your feet. Lin Chen's body trembled slightly. The nervousness in his heart suddenly disappeared. He held his head high and looked directly at the four with a sneer on his face. Jiang Jingyi shouted, Xuan, I advise you to turn back and be saved. Don't be obsessed. Hee, you said the same thing in Yan's city back then. But after so many years, I'm still alive and well. I'm not interested in you now. Xuan grinned and looked up at the top of the mountain. He said with a sinister smile, Jiang Haotian, if you don't want them to die, get down here now. Fatso's eyes trembled. He asked, Boss, what should we do? Qin Feiyang did not hesitate. He stood up and looked at Zua and, little bastard, you're good. I was fooled by you last time at the Eagle Claw Peak. I was hiding here and you found me again. I can't help but wonder if I owed you something in my previous life. Xuan frowned. This kid was simply his nemesis. Qin Feiyang jumped a few times and landed in the canyon. Fatso followed, closely behind him. There would be a fierce battle later. He would only be safe if he stayed by Qin Feiyang's side. Elder Shi also followed beside him. Qin Feiyang did not say a word. He walked step by step toward Zua and Ma Cheng, who was at the side, pursed his lips and sneered. Silly boy, didn't I ask you to never come back? Why are you so disobedient? The Black Bear King's angry voice resounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked into the Black Bear King's eyes. He smiled and said, You've saved my life a few times. How can I stand by and do nothing? Sai, you're so silly. The Black Bear King sighed. Fortune favors fools. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked down at Xuan. He said, I don't want to talk nonsense. Let them go, and I'll go with you. No, the Martial Lord Hall Master immediately shouted. Qin Feiyang said, This is my personal matter. Please don't interfere. Xuan looked at Qin Feiyang with flickering eyes. There's nothing to think about. I'm more valuable than them. I can help you refine the supreme grade blood spirit pill. I believe it won't be long before you step into the 9-star combat emperor realm or even higher. Qin Feiyong said expressionlessly. King Yan and the others frowned. Xuan glanced at the four overlords and said, "That's a good idea. But aren't you afraid of being hunted down by them?" "Hunted down? I'll tell you the truth. I've made a plan. If you follow it step by step, you'll definitely die today. But some old bastard wants to take revenge on me. Do you think I still need to be afraid? I hate them more than you do now. I can follow you. If you don't mind, we can join hands. You have the strength, and I have the brains. We can turn the county of Yan upside down." Qin Feiyong said coldly. The martial lord hall master's heart sank. The situation had become serious. Ma Cheng was not angry. Instead, the sneer on his face became thicker. Because if Qin Feiyong really reached an agreement with Xuan, he would have every reason to kill Qin Feiyong in front of the martial Lord Hallmaster. Xuan looked at Ma Cheng thoughtfully, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Are you that confident?" Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, "At least, I'm stronger than that trash Lin Chin." Lin Chin clenched his fists and his eyes were gloomy. Xuan said with a smile, "Compared to Lin Chin, you're indeed much stronger." Ha! Suddenly, Xuan laughed out loud. "Little bastard. Do you think I don't know what you're planning? You'll definitely hide after I release them. At that time, those four old dogs can attack me without any scruples." Xuan looked at him mockingly. Qin Feiyong's heart shuddered. This old fox was not easy to fool. "Little bastard, do you know? I hate you so much that I can't wait to drink your blood and eat your flesh. But after thinking about it, I changed my mind. It's too easy for you to kill you directly. I'll torture you and make you suffer so much that you'll wish you were dead. I'll completely destroy you mentally. You want them very much? All right, I'll give them to you. Anyway, they're no longer of any value." Xuan kicked the Black Bear King's head, and that huge body smashed towards Qin Feiyong with the sound of wind and thunder. At the same time, the Black Bear King let out a blood-curdling scream. The martial Lord Hall Master waved his hand, caught the Black Bear King, and placed him on the ground. Qin Feiyong hurriedly looked over, only to see that the Black Bear King's head had already split open and blood was gushing out. "Senior Bear King," he roared, squatted in front of the Black Bear King, took out a large pile of healing pills, and stuffed them into the Black Bear King's mouth. Xuan laughed sinisterly and picked up Feng Cheng. Streams of battle chi madly rushed towards Feng Cheng's heart. Ah! The excruciating pain woke Feng Cheng up. Qin Feiyong raised his head abruptly, his eyes widening in anger as he rushed towards Xuan and without caring about his own safety. "Zhang Haotian, calm down." Shi Zheng hurriedly hugged him and advised anxiously, "Pain? Sorrow? TSK, this is just the beginning. The more painful things are yet to come. One day, you'll regret provoking me. You'll kneel in front of me like a dog and beg me to spare you." "Ha ha!" Xuan laughed maniacally and threw Feng Cheng in front of Qin Feiyong as if he was throwing rubbish. Following closely, he grabbed Lin Chen and charged into the sky without even looking back. "Where do you think you're going?" The King of Yan and Jiang Jingyi shouted angrily at the same time, carrying a monstrous aura as they chased after him. "Watch him!" The martial Lord Hall Master instructed Shi Zheng, glanced at Ma Cheng gloomily, and quickly chased after him. Humph! Chapter 177. However, Qin Feiyong was completely unaware of their departure. "Elder Feng, Senior Bear King, you won't die!" He grabbed the highest grade healing pills and stuffed them into the Black Bear King and Feng Cheng's mouths one by one. It was as if as long as they took enough pills, they would be able to live. Fatso watched from the side and was about to get angry. The Bear King's head was broken. Feng Cheng's heart was broken. It was obvious that there was no hope. He wanted to comfort him, but he didn't know how to say it. Shi Zheng also lowered his head in silence. He didn't expect that this seemingly strong young man would have such a weak side. Suddenly, Feng Cheng stretched out his old hand and grabbed Qin Feiyang's wrist, laughing intermittently. "Brat, I didn't expect to see you again before I die." As he spoke, he vomited blood. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, "Elder Feng, don't talk. If you don't say it now, you won't have the chance. Brat, promise me a request. Ling Er's parents died early. Since we were young, we relied on each other for survival. The one I can't let go of the most is her. When I die, help me take care of her, okay?" Feng Qing looked at him pleadingly. "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. Suppressing the emotions in his heart, he turned to look at Shi Zheng and smiled. "Elder Shi, can you leave me for a while? I have something to say to Elder Feng." "Okay." Shi Zheng turned and walked outside. Qin Feiyang turned back to look at Feng Qing, only to find that Feng Qing had already closed his eyes. His heartbeat and breathing had also stopped. He originally wanted to tell Feng Qing his true identity, but now there was no chance. "I also have something to ask of you." At this time, the Black Bear King's voice entered his mind. "Senior, no matter what it is, I promise." Qin Feiyang raised his head and nodded with a forced smile on his face. "Do you see that mound? My child is buried there. I hope you can bury me next to it. Let me continue to protect it. Zhuan didn't find the treasure vault. You can take everything in there as well." As the Black Bear King spoke, 2 drops of blood flowed down from the corners of his eyes. It was filled with endless sorrow. After saying this, its aura of life also stopped. Boom! Qin Feiyang was like a bolt from the blue. The black bear cub is dead? It turned out that the mound was its grave. It had only been a few months, so why did it become like this? Why? Suddenly, he raised his head and roared. Meanwhile, rumble, crack. In the distance, a series of loud noises came, shaking the heavens and the earth. Terrifying shock waves from the battle spread rapidly. "They're fighting." Fatso and Shi Zheng looked at the sky in surprise. But Qin Feiyang didn't look at him, looking indifferent. He got up and walked to the side of the mound. True qi gushed out from the soles of his feet, and with a boom, a deep pit suddenly appeared. After burying the Black Bear Queen, he bowed deeply 3 times before the grave. There weren't any bold words. Everything seemed plain and simple. After that, he walked into the cave alone and saw many corpses. It was too horrible to look at, but there was no change in his expression. He entered the treasury, took everything and left the cave. He carried Elder Feng's body and walked out of the canyon. Shi Zheng hurriedly asked, "Jiang Haoyan, where are you going?" Qin Feiyang said, "Black Bear City." Fatso chased after him and asked, "Boss, don't you want to see what happened to Zuan?" "Not interested," Qin Feiyang whispered. He looked up at the sky, and 2 rays of light shot out, because he won't die. Won't die. Fatso and Shi Zheng looked at each other, with a trace of surprise in their eyes. For giants working together, how could they not be able to deal with Zuan? Qin Feiyang explained and left the canyon silently. Black Bear City. Isn't he Jiang Haotian? I heard he went to Yen City. Why did he suddenly come back? Look, isn't the person he's carrying the pill hall's Elder Feng? That's right, it's him. I heard that he was kidnapped by Zuan a few months ago. Why is he dead now? As soon as Qin Feiyang entered Black Bear City, the people on the street surrounded him. But with Shi Zheng around, no one could get close. Qin Feiyang went straight to the pill hall, but he did not go in. He stood outside the door. After a while, 2 familiar figures entered his line of sight. They were Luo Xiong and Elder Mo. What's going on? Jiang Haoyan, how did Elder Feng die? The 2 hurriedly ran to Qin Feiyang and asked with a sad face. Qin Feiyang did not explain. After passing Elder Feng to Luo Xiong, he said, "Seniors, please bury him." Okay. The 2 nodded. They had a lot of questions to ask. But Qin Feiyang did not give them the chance to ask. He took out a jade box and stuffed it into Elder Mo's hand. After saying goodbye, he left with Shizheng and Fatso. Elder Emo opened the jade box, and his eyes trembled. There were 4 supreme grade red fire-glazed elixirs inside. The elixir patterns were dazzling. "Where's Brother Jiang? Where is he?" Not long after, Jiang Wei hurriedly ran over and asked Luo Xiong and Elder Mo he's gone. Luo Xiong sighed deeply and left with Elder Mo. The 2 of them looked very lonely. They had heard about the situation in Yen City. If it wasn't for those people from the Danwang Hall, how would it end up like this? Outside the city, Qin Feiyang followed a small path and entered a forest. He took out 3 illusory form elixirs. He took one and gave the other 2 to Fatso and Shizheng. The 2 of them looked at each other and took the elixirs suspiciously. Fatso was puzzled. "Boss, is there a need to change your appearance now?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "You can't let your guard down. After changing your appearance, go to Black Bear City and wait for me. I want to go somewhere." Shizheng raised his eyebrows and said, "No, I can't let you leave alone. I'm just going to a small village. I'll be fine." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he gave Fatso a look. Fatso understood and pounced on Shizheng, hugging him tightly. At the same time, Qin Feiyang turned and quickly disappeared into the forest, disappearing from Shizheng's sight. Shizheng was shocked and said angrily, "Fatso, what are you doing? Let go of me, unless you kill Fat Lord." Fatso refused to let go and sighed. "Elder Shi, Fat Lord knows that you are concerned about Jiang Laoda, but I am more concerned about his safety than you are. Don't worry, he will be fine." Shizheng frowned and said in a deep voice, "If anything happens to him, will you be responsible?" "If I'm responsible, I'll be responsible. Let's go to Spring Breeze restaurant to drink and get drunk." After Fatso consumed the illusory form elixir, he dragged Shizheng towards Black Bear City. In front of a fast-flowing river, Qin Feiyang turned his head and glanced at the forest behind him. Seeing that Shizheng did not chase after him, he finally let out a long sigh. The place he was going to now was Iron Ox Town. So, he definitely could not let Shizheng follow him. The current him was no longer the same as before. In less than half a day, they arrived at Iron Ox Town. Entering the town with an unfamiliar face would definitely arouse suspicion. After all, Iron Ox Town was not big and there were not many people. Everyone knew each other. "I say, young man, where did you come from? What business do you have in our Iron Ox Town?" A few old men who were playing chess under a big tree stopped Qin Feiyang and asked curiously. Qin Feiyang just smiled at them and walked past them. What a strange kid. The old men shook their heads and did not pay much attention to him. "Lin family." Qin Feiyang stood in front of the gate, looked at the 2 servants and said indifferently, "Take me to see Lin Chang." "Who are you? Is the patriarch someone you can see whenever you want? Tell me your name." The 2 servants shouted coldly. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly and directly rushed in. "How dare you, coming to my Lin family to behave atrociously? See if I don't break your dog legs." The 2 servants were full of hostility, waving their fists and punching towards Qin Feiyang. "Humph!" Qin Feiyang snorted and turned around to slap them. Slap! The 2 servants were slapped away on the spot. A bright red palm print quickly appeared on their faces, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of their mouths. "If you dare to block my way again, I'll kill you." After coldly leaving behind these words, Qin Feiyang strode into the Lin clan. He was no stranger to the Lin family. He walked to the meeting hall with ease. The servants he met along the way were a little confused. Who was this master? After passing through a garden, he found Lin Chang sitting alone in a pavilion, drinking wine. His clothes were disheveled, his hair was disheveled, and his face was dirty. He looked like an old man with 1 foot in the grave. Qin Feiyang walked behind the 2 servants and asked, What's wrong with Lin Chong? Sigh, it's all because of Mississippi. Ever since Miss went to Yen City, the patriarch has been like this, drinking all day and doing nothing. If this goes on, the Lin family will decline sooner or later. The two servants sighed. After that, they found that something was wrong. They turned to Qin Feiyang and scolded. Who are you? What are you doing in our Lin family? I'm here to find your patriarch. Qin Feiyang said lightly and strode toward the pavilion. The two servants looked at each other and hurriedly chased after him. With Qin Feiyang's current speed, how could the two servants catch up with him? He walked into the pavilion. Immediately, the smell of wine and stench mixed together, forming a stench that assailed his nose. He frowned, looked at the drunk Lin Chong, and shook his head. I didn't expect you to become like this in less than a year. Who are you? Are you here to drink with me? Lin Chong stood up drunkenly and staggered toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and stood aside. With a bang, Lin Chong lost his balance and fell to the ground. The two servants ran over and hurriedly helped him up. Smelling the stench, disgust filled the faces of the two men. Qin Feiyang shook his head. As the patriarch of the Lin family, you even began to hate the servants. How can you be such a failure? I don't need your help. Get out of my way. Chapter 178. Get out. Qin Feiyang snorted, looked at the two maids, and asked, Where is the pond? One of the maids said, There is one in the backyard. Why are you looking for the pond? Take me there. Qin Feiyang stretched out his big hand and picked Lin Chong up as if he was picking up a chick. The two maids were hesitant, because they guessed what Qin Feiyang wanted to do. Qin Feiyang shouted, If you don't want to die, lead the way quickly. The two maids shuddered and quickly ran to the backyard. Dong! In front of the pond, Qin Feiyang directly threw Lin Chong in without saying a word. Help! At that moment, in the water, Lin Chong began to struggle madly. He kept calling for help. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He turned to look at the two maids and asked, He can't swim? The two maids nodded, leaned together, and shrank their bodies. Their small faces were pale. Who dared to throw the patriarch into the pond? Who was this person? Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Then why don't you call someone to save him? I won't be responsible if he drowns. Come on, the patriarch is drowning. The two maids immediately shouted. Almost at the next moment, in a nearby attic, a servant ran out. When he came to the pond, he saw Lin Chang's situation and hurriedly jumped in. It took him a lot of effort to save Lin Chong. The servant took a few breaths, glared at the two maids, and shouted, What's the matter with you? If anything happens to the patriarch, can you bear the responsibility? It has nothing to do with us. It was he who threw the patriarch in. The two maids pointed to Qin Feiyang. The servant looked at Qin Feiyang and shouted, You dare to murder the patriarch? Are you looking for death? Get out. Qin Feiyang spat out this word coldly. What did you say? I dare you to say that again. That servant's eyes widened in anger, full of hostility. Scram, Qin Feiyang said. You're courting death. The servant let out a low growl and pounced at Qin Feiyang. Stop. But at this moment, a low shout came from behind. Patriarch. The servant was overjoyed and quickly turned around to look. Lin Chong got up from the ground and shook his head hard to get rid of the last trace of drunkenness. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. That servant ran to Lin Chang's side and sternly said, Master, he was the one who threw you into the pond. He must have eaten a leopard's guts. Lin Chong let out a long breath and walked in front of Qin Feiyang. He sneered and said, Do you know why this patriarch asked him to stop? Qin Feiyang said indifferently, I'm not interested. Even if you're not interested, you still have to listen. It's because this patriarch wants to personally blow your head off. Lin Chong laughed sinisterly. True Qi surged as he punched towards Qin Feiyong. You don't have this ability now. Qin Feiyong stretched out his arm and easily caught Lin Chang's fist. How is this possible? Lin Chong was shocked. He used all his strength, but couldn't pull his hand out. That servant was also dumbfounded. This person was actually so strong. Even the patriarch could be easily subdued. Fortunately, before he didn't really rush up. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Chong was shocked and angry. Who the hell are you? Qin Feiyong let go of his hand and said lightly, I want to talk to you alone. Lin Chong shook his hand and looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. He waved his hand and said, All of you retreat. That servant and 2 servant girls, as if they had been pardoned, disappeared in a few blinks of an eye. Lin Chong said, Say it now. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, Your current appearance is really embarrassing, but this is what you asked for. No one will sympathize with you. Is this what you want to say? Lin Chong clenched his fists. His eyes flashed fiercely. Qin Feiyong said, I don't have so much time to care about your affairs. I'm just thinking that if Linny knows that you have become like this, she should be very sad. Lin Chang's gaze trembled. He stepped forward and grabbed Qin Feiyong's clothes. He roared with a ferocious face, How do you know Who the hell are you? Qin Feiyong didn't speak. He just looked at him faintly. After a while, Lin Chong reacted. He hurriedly let go of his hand and bowed. Sir, I'm sorry. I offended you. Qin Feiyong said, If I give you another chance, will you still deal with Qin Feiyong? Lin Chang's body shook. He said in surprise, You know Qin Feiyong? Answer me. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Lin Chong lowered his head. His hands were clenched together. His face was distorted and looked ferocious. He hated Qin Feiyong from the bottom of his heart. It was because Qin Feiyong killed Lin Bailey that Lin Han was enraged. He snatched Yi and forced him to sign the agreement to sever the father-daughter relationship. So in his view, all of this was caused by Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong looked disappointed and shook his head. It has been so long, but you are still stubborn. You are hopeless. People like you really shouldn't be sympathized. Who do you think you are? Do you know what Qin Feiyong did to me? How much do you know about Qin Feiyong? What right do you have to criticize me here? Lin Chin roared with all his might. I don't want to argue with you. Just pretend that I didn't come this time. Qin Feiyong said lightly, then turned and left. Lin Chong stared at Qin Feiyong's back angrily. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and his body trembled. He hurriedly said, Are you Qin Feiyong? That's right. Go and tell Lin Han. This is a good opportunity. He should reward you with some benefits. No, it shouldn't be a reward. It should be alms. Qin Feiyong said sarcastically without turning his head. He is really Qin Feiyong. Lin Chong felt very uncomfortable and incredulous. In less than a year, he had become so strong. Was he still the trash from before? Seeing that Qin Feiyong was about to leave his sight, he suddenly shivered and shouted, Wait! Qin Feiyong didn't stop and left the Lin family. Why did he suddenly appear? What does he want to do? Revenge? It doesn't seem like it. If it's revenge, now is the best opportunity. Lin Chong muttered to himself. He really couldn't figure out the purpose of Qin Feiyong's return. Suddenly, a sharp light flashed. He hurriedly ran into a secret room, walked to the image crystal and put his hand on it, but he immediately withdrew his hand. There was a struggle on his face. Should he report to Lin Han? After repeating this for a while, he made up his mind, turned around, and ran out of the secret room. He hurriedly came to the door, looked at the 2 servants, and asked, Where is that person just now? Which direction did he go? Patriarch, you're finally awake. The 2 servants were very excited. Lin Chong said angrily, I asked you a question, didn't you hear it? The two of them were stunned and soon knew who Lin Chong was talking about. Because in the whole day, only one person had come to the Lin family, and that was the person who slapped them. He seems to have gone in the direction of the treasure pavilion. Patriarch, did he do something to you? Don't worry, I'll go gather everyone now and find him to settle the score. The two servants' faces were filled with hostility. Slap! But what they didn't expect was that Lin Chong actually slapped them in the ear. Stay here obediently. If you dare to touch him, I'll kill you first. Before the two of them could react, Lin Chong left a ruthless sentence and ran in the direction of the treasure pavilion. We're going to help him vent his anger, but he actually hit us. Is he crazy? The two of them looked aggrieved and puzzled. Treasure pavilion. Reception room. A dignified and beautiful woman sat by the tea table, sizing up the person opposite her. The woman was Luo Qianxue. As for the person opposite her, it was naturally Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Senior, you still don't recognize me? I don't recognize you. Luo Qianxue shook her head, her face full of suspicion. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Now that he had changed his appearance and let Luo Qianxue guess, it was a bit too much for her. He smiled and said, Senior, I'm Qin Feiyang. What? Luo Qianxue suddenly stood up and said in surprise, Is it really you? It's really me. Qin Feiyang nodded. Seeing the beautiful woman in front of him again, he felt a sense of familiarity that he hadn't felt for a long time. He felt very at ease. Luo Qianxue walked up and knocked on Qin Feiyang's head. She said angrily, Brat, you're back. Why do you still need me to guess? Qin Feiyang rubbed his head, looking charmingly naive. Come, sit here. Luo Qianxue shook her head and laughed. She pulled Qin Feiyang to the chair next to her. Qin Feiyang didn't sit down and let Luo Qianxue sit down first. Then, he bowed to Luo Qianxue and said solemnly, Senior, thank you for lending me a hand when I was in danger. I can't thank you enough. Luo Qianxue smiled and said, It's just a small matter. Don't call me Senior. You're not weak now. If you don't mind, just call me Aunt Shui. Aunt Shui? Qin Feiyang was stunned. There was an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. He nodded and said, Feiyang can't wait. Why would I mind? Luo Qianxue made tea and sighed. Your life this year is really exciting. Qin Feiyang asked, Aunt Shui, you mean? Luo Qianxue said, Qing Zhu has already told me about your deeds through the image crystal. It's been hard on you to experience so much at such a young age. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Without pressure, I won't grow. This is what Uncle Yuan taught me. It only took 5 years to teach such a promising child. Qin Yuan is really great. Luo Qianxue shook her head and sighed. She poured a cup of tea and placed it in front of Qin Feiyang. She asked, Why did you come back this time? Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup, took a sip and nodded. There are indeed some things, but I didn't do it. But it doesn't matter. The situation I set in Yen City should be enough for me to reverse the situation. He came to Iron Ox Town for Lin Chong, because Lin Chong was clear about the conflict between him and Lin Bailey. If Lin Chong helped to speak, then Lin Han couldn't find any excuse to refute him. More importantly, it was not a simple matter to let the royal family cancel the wedding of Lin Yi and the eldest prince. But if Lin Chong was present, the effect would be different. After all, Lin Chong was Lin Yi's biological father no matter what. An agreement couldn't be broken. Unfortunately, until now, Lin Chong still didn't repent. Chapter 179. Plot. Luo Qianxue was also very surprised. A young man who was not even 16 years old dared to plot in Yen City? This kind of mentality was really shocking. After a moment of silence, Luo Qianxue asked, Do you want to restore your real identity? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I can't use the name Jiang Haotian for the rest of my life. That's true. Luo Qianxuan nodded, thought for a moment, and asked, When do you plan to show your cards? Qin Feiyang said, 9 days later, Yi and the first prince's wedding ceremony. Hearing this, Luo Qianxue's intelligent eyes flashed with a strange light. Knock, knock. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Luo Qianxue asked, Who is it? Pavilion Master. Master Lin wants to see you. A woman's voice came from outside. Do you want to hide? Luo Qianxue frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, No, because he came to see me. See you? Luo Qianxue's face showed a trace of suspicion, and she said to the people outside the door, Let him in. The door was pushed open, and a young woman stood at the door. When the young woman stepped aside, Lin Chang entered their sight. After seeing Qin Feiyang, he was happy and hurried in. Close the door. Without my permission, no one is allowed to enter the reception room. Luo Qianxue ordered the young woman. Yes. The woman answered, closed the door and left. Lin Chang walked to Qin Feiyang, cupped his hands and said, Qin Feiyang in the past. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about the past. Just tell me your purpose. Lin Chang wanted to say something, but he swallowed it back and looked at Luo Qianxue. Qin Feiyang said it's okay. Aunt Xue is not an outsider. Just say it. Aunt Xue? Lin Chang was shocked. When did Qin Feiyang become Luo Qianxue's nephew? Qin Feiyang frowned. Is there anything wrong? If there's nothing important, don't waste my time. Lin Chang said, I want to ask you to help me save Yi. Weren't you the one who insisted on sending her to the royal family? Why do you want to save them now? Moreover, the one who's going to marry her is the first prince, the future county king of the county of Yan. I'm just a nobody. How would I dare to go against the royal family? Qin Feiyang sneered. Yes, in the past, I was blinded by desire and didn't think about Yi's feelings. But ever since Yi left, my heart has become very uncomfortable. I have reflected again and again, regretted it again and again. But what can I do? In front of Lin Han, I'm just an insignificant wretch. I can only use alcohol to numb myself every day. I thought that I might spend the rest of my life like this. But your appearance gave me hope. Lin Chang said guiltily, Don't make it sound so pompous. You drank because Lin Han took Yi away from you. He took away the power that belonged to you. You're begging me now because you're not convinced and don't want Lin Han to succeed. Am I right? Qin Feiyang mocked. Lin Chang's face became extremely ugly, because Qin Feiyang's words were all his inner thoughts. It was tantamount to stripping him naked and exposing him in front of others without any reservation. Lin Chang, you may not know Qin Feiyang's current status in Yen City. Let me tell you this. Every decision he makes now can cause a big storm in Yen City. Luo Qianxue said faintly. In the beginning, in order to stop Lin Yi and Qin Feiyang from being together, this person could be said to be unscrupulous. How could he have thought that the trash bag then would have today's achievements? Perhaps when he learned the truth, even his intestines would turn green with regret. Hearing this, Lin Chang's face was full of disbelief. Even if Qin Feiyang's strength had become stronger now, it was impossible for him to become an important figure in a place like Yen City. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Go back, I can't help you with this matter. Feiyang, I really know I was wrong. I was going to report to Lin Han just now, but I finally figured it out. Just help me, even if you don't give me face, at least for Yi's sake. You don't want to see her marry into the royal family and be depressed for the rest of her life. Lin Chang begged. You still know that she will be depressed? Qin Feiyang suddenly stood up and said angrily, What were you doing at that time? You only know regret now. Are you worthy of being Yi's father? Have you ever considered for her? Lin Chong couldn't find anything to say for a while. I'll kneel for you, okay? In the end, he gritted his teeth, bent his knees, and knelt on the ground. Seeing this, Luo Qinxue stepped forward and grabbed Lin Chang's shoulder. She turned to look at Qin Feiyang and said meaningfully, "After all, he is Yi's biological father." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. It seemed that Luo Qinxue and he had thought of the same thing. "Okay, I'll give Aunt Xue face." After a moment of silence, Qin Feiyang nodded, took out an illusory form pill, threw it to Lin Chong, and said lightly, "Go back and arrange it immediately. Follow me to Yen City later. This is a supreme grade pill." Luo Qinshue's eyes lit up. "What? A supreme grade pill?" Lin Chong was shocked and hurriedly looked at the illusory form pill. When he saw the bright pill pattern, his eyeballs almost popped out. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "Hurry up and arrange it before I regret it." Okay. Lin Chong nodded repeatedly and turned to leave quickly. About half an hour passed. Lin Chong came again. Qin Feiyang also said goodbye to Luo Qinxue and rushed to Black Bear City with Lin Chong. But before leaving, he gave Luo Qinxue a supreme grade red fire colored glass pill. In this way, his original supreme grade red fire colored glass pills were all gone. Only the first prince's 10 pills were left. When they arrived at Black Bear City, it was already late at night. After calling Fatso and Shizheng, they rushed back to Yen City overnight. Calm Heart Lake. Qin Feiyang sat in front of the tea table, looked at Lin Chong, and said, "Before he gets married, you'd better not leave Calm Heart Lake. Otherwise, if anything happens, I won't be responsible." Lin Chong nodded. His heart was in disbelief. Luo Qinxue said that Qin Feiyang's status in Yen City was not ordinary, but he didn't believe it. But on the way here, he finally deeply understood. The 9-star Battle King's personal protection. The martial imperial palace treated him as a distinguished guest. This kind of treatment was really amazing. Qin Feiyang said again, "Lu Hong, take him up and arrange a room for him." "Follow me." Lu Hong glanced at Lin Chong, turned and walked to the second floor. Soon, Lu Hong went downstairs again, frowning. "Who is he?" Qin Feiyang said, "Yi's father." Lu Hong and Fatso looked at each other, a trace of doubt in their eyes. "Don't ask about this. Help me count the things in this Qinquan bag." Qin Feiyang took out a Qinquan bag and put it on the tea table. Inside was the Black Bear King's treasure. Fatso sighed secretly, suddenly grinned, took out a big red flower, and said, "Boss, look at what this is." 9 Suns flower? Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked, and said in a daze, "Where did it come from?" "You forgot it so quickly?" Fatso rolled his eyes and said, "It's the one in the canyon. When Shizheng and I were drinking at Spring Breeze restaurant, we suddenly remembered that we had forgotten to pick it, so we ran back to pick it." Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead, feeling rather annoyed. At that time, he had completely thrown the 9 Suns flower to the back of his mind. Fortunately, Fatso remembered. Otherwise, he would have to make another trip. "Thank you," Qin Feiyang said with a smile as he took the 9 Suns flower. His eyes flickered with radiance. He looked at Fatso and asked, "Did you see Zuan and the others when you went back?" Fatso shook his head and said they were long gone. "By the way, should we tell Fengling heir about Feng Cheng's death?" Qin Feiyang hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll tell her later. Let's contact Manager Li first." Fatso took out an image crystal, and his genuine qi surged. Manager Li's image quickly appeared. "Manager," Li said in surprise, "you're already back." "Isn't it obvious?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Has Zuen been killed?" Manager Li asked. "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. He was not in the mood to ask. He asked, "How's the collection of medicinal herbs?" Manager Li said, "The Lin family has a snow crystal, and the royal family has a 9 sons flower, but they don't intend to sell it. Why? Qin Feiyang frowned. Manager, Li said. They said they want to use it as a prize for the competition. You should know about the competition organized by the royal family, right? Qin Feiyang nodded. The first prize is a 9 sons flower, the second prize is a snow crystal, and the third prize is a leaf of the red glazed tree. Manager Li smiled. The rewards are so generous. Qin Feiyang was surprised. These 3 medicinal herbs were rare. The royal family and the Lin family were really generous. Manager Li joked, "Brat, you're so smart. Can't you see that the royal family is actually trying to lure you to participate? They're targeting you." "Lure me?" Qin Feiyang frowned. He really couldn't figure it out. Manager Li said, "According to reliable sources, the first prince is the one who arranged the prizes. Do you understand now?" "So that's how it is." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. He pursed his lips and sneered. Fatso and Zhua had humiliated the first prince last time. They must have held a grudge against him. The first prince was a smart person. He knew that Zhua would not participate in such a boring competition. So he used these 3 precious medicinal herbs as bait to force Zhua to participate. His purpose was to defeat Zhua and humiliate him and embarrass him in front of everyone in Yen City. Manager Li said playfully, "So, are you going to participate or not?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "I was worried that I couldn't find a suitable wedding gift. I didn't expect him to deliver it to me. Do you think I should go or not?" "We won't be polite to people who are looking for trouble," Fatso said with a smirk. Interesting. Manager Li couldn't help but laugh. Qin Feiyang said, "Senior, I'll have to trouble you to send the medicinal herbs over now. Then you must prepare the gold coins. This is not a small sum." Chapter 180. The First Prince. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered for a while before asking, "Do you know the cultivation of the first prince?" "We don't know." Fatso and Limu shook their heads. Qin Feiyang got up and said, "I'll go to the cultivation hall. When Steward Li comes, you can ask him about the rules of the competition. The more detailed, the better." Lu Hong frowned and said, "You've come back in a hurry. Go and have a rest first. I'll talk to Feng Ling Air." Fatso nodded. It could be seen that although Qin Feiyang looked strong, he was actually very tired. They really wanted to share some of the burden with Qin Feiyang. "It's okay. You've done me a great favor by counting the Qinkuan bag." Qin Feiyang smiled, turned around, walked out of the attic, and went straight to the cultivation hall. 2 deacon elders were guarding here. One of them asked in confusion, "What are you doing here?" Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, "I want to see Feng Ling Air." "I guess that you're looking for Feng Ling Air. She's in the number 1 cultivation room. Go in by yourself. Remember to be reserved." The 2 of them said with a smile, which was very ambiguous, "Reserved?" Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Did they forget that he was still a minor? But he didn't explain. He cupped his hands to the 2 of them and walked into the cultivation hall. In front of the number 1 cultivation room, Qin Feiyang looked at the stone door and didn't knock for a long time, because he could imagine how sad Feng Ling Air would be when she learned of Feng Cheng's death. Knock, knock. In the end, he let out a long breath and reached out to gently knock on the door. But after waiting for a long time, Feng Ling Air didn't open the door. "She's not here?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Just as he was about to turn and leave, the stone door slowly opened and a pale face entered Qin Feiyang's line of sight. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Ling Air. There were tear stains on her cheeks, and her eyes were red and swollen. She looked rather haggard. It was obvious that she had just cried. A trace of doubt crept onto his face as he asked, "What's wrong with you?" "What's the matter?" Feng Ling Air asked a question instead of answering. Her voice was a little hoarse. Qin Feiyang swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. If there's nothing else, then leave. I'm not in the mood to entertain you right now. After Feng Ling Er finished speaking, she reached out and closed the stone door. What needs to be said must be said. Qin Feiyang sighed inwardly. He reached out his hand and pressed on the stone door. He looked at Feng Ling Er and said, "Your grandfather," immediately. Feng Ling Er's body trembled. "What is it?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "You already know?" "Yes, it was Elder Ji who told me personally." Feng Ling Er nodded. Tears streamed down her face. Qin Feiyang said in surprise, "How did she know? Could it be that the palace master has returned?" "I don't know anything. I just want to be alone." Feng Ling Er shook her head. With a bang, she slammed the door shut. The sound of sobbing could be heard vaguely. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the door. He was at a loss. "Haotian, in the entire Martial Imperial Palace, you have the best relationship with Ling. You should comfort her." Suddenly, the voice of an old man echoed from behind. Qin Feiyang was startled. He turned his head and saw Elder Wan standing behind him. His old face was full of worry. Qin Feiyang said angrily, "Senior, can't you make some noise when you walk?" Elder Wan smiled, but it was very stiff. Qin Feiyang asked, "Is the palace master back?" "He's on his way back. By the way, let me tell you a piece of bad news. Zwan escaped." Elder Wan said, "This should be good news." Qin Feiyang pursed his lips and sneered. Elder Wan frowned and said unhappily, "What are you talking about?" "The truth. With a villain like Ma Cheng, it's hard not to fail. By the way, did you tell Feng Ling Er the real cause of Feng Cheng's death?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No. She's very sad now and she's still so young. We don't want her to bear too much." "Don't tell her either. In addition, the palace master has reached an agreement with Ma Cheng. The Danwang Hall will no longer target you. But in advance, you can't spread what Ma Cheng did in the Black Bear Mountain, especially that fatso. Tell him to keep his mouth shut." Feng Cheng said with a serious face. Since he dared to do it, why would he be afraid of others talking about it? Qin Feiyang said angrily. "After all, he is the palace master of the Danwang Hall. His reputation is very important. Our palace master, King Yan, and pavilion master Jiang also have to think about the overall situation. In such a complicated environment, many things can't be done as you want." Elder Feng Cheng's face was also full of helplessness. Qin Feiyang said self-deprecatingly, "The death of Feng Cheng and the Black Bear King in exchange for our peace. This is really a good deal." "Alas!" Elder Wan sighed softly, patted him on the shoulder, and comforted him. "The dead can't be brought back to life. Don't be too sad. Live well in the present." After saying that, Elder Wan turned and left. He came here to comfort Feng Ling Er, but now it seemed that he didn't need to comfort her. Ma Cheng! Qin Feiyang clenched his hands tightly, and his eyes became aggressive. Although he couldn't do anything to Ma Cheng now, he would slowly collect interest. He turned to look at the cultivation room and was about to leave, but at this moment, Feng Ling Er opened the stone door and walked out of the cultivation room. She said indifferently, "Follow me." Qin Feiyang followed silently. Since he had promised Feng Cheng, he naturally had to do it. It turned out that Feng Ling Er was going to drown her sorrows in alcohol. Drinking until midnight, she was already drunk to the point of unconsciousness. Qin Feiyang carried her back to the Jingxin Lake. Fatso and the other two immediately went up to greet him. Arriving at the second floor, Qin Feiyang walked into a room and placed Feng Ling Er on the bed. Then, he got up and looked at Lu Hong, smiling. "Go get a basin of water to wipe her, and then change her into a clean set of clothes." During this period of time, you don't have to do anything. You are responsible for accompanying her. Go out more often and talk. Okay. Lu Hong nodded. Thank you for your hard work. Qin Feiyang smiled and said to Fatso, Come down with me. The two of them quickly went downstairs and sat beside the coffee table. Qin Feiyang asked, Where are the medicinal herbs? Fatso took out 2 Qingkuan bag and said excitedly, Do you know what Fat Lord found in the Black Bear King's treasure? 2 red glass trees, a total of 6 leaves, 7 fire ginseng, 2 blood ginseng, 1 9 suns flower, and 1 snow crystal. What? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. There were actually such precious medicinal herbs? Fatso said, Other than these, there are many other precious medicinal herbs. As for gold coins, there aren't many, only 1 million. Qin Feiyang laughed. With those medicinal herbs, would we still lack gold coins? He was very grateful to the Black Bear King, but at the same time he blamed himself even more. If he hadn't informed King Yen and the others, how could the Black Bear King have died? Fatso frowned and said angrily, Boss, don't take all the responsibility on yourself. This is increasing the pressure on yourself. If you want to blame someone, blame that old bastard Ma Cheng. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, I'm fine. Sigh. Fatso sighed and said with a smile, Fat Lord has sorted it out. We have already gathered 3 sets of medicinal herbs for the potential elixir and 6 sets of medicinal herbs for the red glass elixir. They are all in this Qingkuan bag. Fatso pointed to the Qingkuan bag on the left. 3 sets. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. He turned to look at Fatso, his eyes flickering. Fatso touched his nose and chuckled. Why are you looking at Fat Lord like that? Are you also mesmerized by Fat Lord's handsomeness? At that moment, Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said with a smile, I might as well give all the medicinal herbs and gold coins to you for safekeeping. Fatso was slightly stunned and said with a sneaky smile, Aren't you afraid that Fat Lord will fill his pockets? Qin Feiyang said lightly, It doesn't matter. Anyway, when the time comes, I will ask you for the medicinal herbs. You want to be a hands-off shopkeeper. Fatty had a helpless expression on his face. To be honest, it is not safe to leave the medicinal herbs and gold coins with Fat Lord. What if Fat Lord is robbed? So we have to separate them. The medicinal herbs will be with Fat Lord and the gold coins will be with Lu Hong. Boss, what do you think? Fatso asked. Qin Feiyang laughed. You have considered it quite thoroughly. You guys do as you see fit. I will go and refine the potential pill first. Give me the Qingkuan bag after you have sorted it out. Remember to leave me some pocket money. In your dreams, Fat Lord won't leave you a single silver coin. Fatso laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him, grabbed the Qingkuan bag on the left, and prepared to enter the castle. Boss, wait, what should we do with this? Fatso hurriedly called out to him and took out a piece of paper. Qin Feiyang took a look and his face immediately darkened. This was an IOU. It was written that Qin Feiyang owed Treasure Pavilion 30 million gold coins. If he did not pay it off within a month, he would receive 1,000 gold coins interest every day. 30 million, where are we going to find it? Damn it! Why doesn't that old bastard manager rob us? Fatso's face was filled with anger and a headache. Qin Feiyang asked, How many gold coins do we have now? Fatso said, More than 4 million. Only 4 million. It's really a drop in the bucket. When I refine the Scarlet Fire colored glass pill, I will use it to pay off the debt. Qin Feiyang threw the IOU to Fatso and disappeared without a trace. Not long after, Lu Hong went downstairs. Fatso asked, How is she? Asleep. Lu Hong smiled and asked, What were you guys talking about downstairs just now? Fatso said, Boss said that from now on, Fat Lord will be in charge of medicinal herbs, and you will be in charge of gold coins. In other words, Fat Lord will be in charge of resources, and you will be in charge of finances. Lu Hong laughed. This is a good thing. It means that he trusts us a lot. So, you have to do a good job and not let boss down. How about we go on a date and have a candlelit dinner to celebrate? Fatso stared at her lecherously. Lu Hong's face immediately turned cold. Fatso shrunk his neck and hurriedly ran away. At the same time, in a certain hall of the palace, Lin Hao frowned. Your Highness, the elimination round will begin tomorrow. Jiang Haotian still hasn't come to register. Do you think he will come to participate in the competition? The eldest prince said, If I knew, would I still be here worrying? Lin Hao said, Let's increase the reward. The eldest prince's eyes lit up. This was a good idea. All right, tomorrow morning you will announce it. The prize for first place is a 9 suns flower and a snow crystal. The prize for second place is 3 leaves of the scarlet fire colored glass tree. The prize for third place is a fire ginseng. I don't believe that I can't lure him out. Chapter 181. At dawn, Qin Feiyong walked out of the castle and pushed the door open. He saw that Feng Ling had woken up and was standing alone by the lake, looking at the clear water in a daze. Lu Hong was accompanying her. Qin Feiyong walked over and apologized. I'm sorry, I'm incompetent. I couldn't save your grandfather. Feng Ling said, This has nothing to do with you. You don't have to blame yourself. Qin Feiyong's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Boss, you're so early. Fatso's voice came from the other side of the lake. Qin Feiyong looked up and saw Fatso standing on the other side of the wooden bridge, waving at him. You're even earlier. Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Of course, haven't you heard? The early bird gets the worm. Fatso chuckled and quickly ran over, saying, Boss, Fat Lord really heard a strange news. What news? Qin Feiyong and Lu Hong looked at him suspiciously. The prize of the competition has suddenly doubled. Fatso explained in detail. After listening, Qin Feiyong sneered. This eldest prince is really impatient. Feng Ling turned to look at him and frowned. Are you going to participate in the competition? Qin Feiyong said. With such a tempting prize in front of me, how can I not go? Feng Ling thought for a moment and said, Then I'll go too. I have nothing to do anyway. No. Fatso shook his head. Why not? Feng Ling asked. Qin Feiyong was also puzzled. Fatso said, According to the rules of this competition, only those under the age of 18 can participate. If Fat Lord remembers correctly, you should be 18 years old. Feng Ling frowned and said, Why did they set this rule? That's what the first prince said. He wants to give the youngsters from Yen City a chance. In fact, it's to prevent martial arts prodigies like you from participating in the competition. Especially since you have a good relationship with us. You will definitely help us. If you go, the first place will be yours, and his plan won't succeed. Tell me, is this bullshit first prince despicable? Fatso sneered. Qin Feiyong said that's a good thing. Lu Hong nodded and said with a smile. Indeed, if the younger generation were to participate, we would have no hope of winning. Qin Feiyong pondered for a while, then looked at Fatso and said, Go and call Ling Yunfei. We'll meet at the gate. Okay. Fatso chuckled, turned around, and ran away. Qin Feiyong looked at Feng Ling and asked, Do you want to join in the fun? Feng Ling said, If we can't participate, why should we go? All right then. Qin Feiyong nodded and said to Lu Hong, Accompany her. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the wooden bridge. At the same time, Shi Zhang was jumping down from the balcony of the attic next door. Qin Feiyong walked over and said with a smile, Elder Shi, the palace master, and Ma Cheng have already reached an agreement. He didn't dare to touch them. Let's go. Qin Feiyang called Ling Yunfei and the other two and walked out. Go. Manager Li was stunned and hurriedly said, Wait. Is there anything else? Qin Feiyang asked. Manager Li said, The account hasn't been settled yet. How can you leave? You still have to give me 2 top-grade red fire colored glass pills. Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. He turned to look at him and asked, Why? Manager Li said, Nonsense, of course, to give to Jia He. Otherwise, do you think I took those 3 blood ginseng for free? Qin Feiyang frowned. Not included in the 30 million? No, Manager Li said. In this way, I bought nearly 40 million medicinal herbs this time, didn't I? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Weren't the medicinal herbs of the potential pill a bit too expensive? Shi Zhang and Ling Yunfei next to him were also dumbfounded. What medicinal herbs were worth 40 million? Manager Li stared at him carefully and said, Boss Zhang, I have to tell you, you can't go back on your words, or I'll ask Jia He to ask for it from you. Do I look like someone who would go back on his words? Qin Feiyang glared at him angrily, took out 2 top-grade red fire colored glass pills, and threw them over. In fact, his heart was aching. 10 top-grade red fire colored glass pills were gone as soon as he came to the treasure pavilion. He was really bleeding a lot. Boss Zhang is indeed a man of his word. Manager Li gave him a thumbs up and laughed heartily. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, Continue to help me collect those medicinal herbs, especially the snow crystal, 9 suns flower, and blood ginseng. Manager Li smiled. As long as you have money, everything is negotiable. But can you reveal a little bit what kind of pill you want to refine? You want to know? Wait patiently. Qin Feiyang laughed, turned around, and strode away. Bastard. Manager Li cursed secretly, but he was more and more curious. Fatso chased after him and frowned. Boss, I still want to save some money, but if you squander it like this, I'm afraid we'll be poor for the rest of our lives. Don't worry, when the time comes, we only need 1 pill, and we'll get back the cost. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, showing off absolute confidence. Hearing this, Shi Zhang and Ling Yunfei looked at each other and couldn't help but feel surprised. What kind of pill could be worth 40 million gold coins? Fatso's eyebrows were also full of doubts. Leaving the treasure pavilion, Shi Zhang took the 3 of them and rushed to the East City district. This news quickly spread to the ears of the first prince and Lin Hao. They're finally here. This time, I'm going to make a fool of you in public. Let's go and welcome them. The first prince sneered, got up, and walked out of the hall. Welcome. Lin Hao was slightly stunned and frowned. There's no need for that. The first prince said, I have to see him sign up with my own eyes before I can be completely relieved. Okay. Lin Hao nodded, got up, and followed the first prince to a square outside the palace, waiting quietly. There were many young people around. When they saw the 2 of them, they ran up to curry favor. They didn't know how long they had waited. In short, they were impatient. Finally, for familiar figures entered their line of sight. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also noticed the first prince and the second prince. Ling Yunfei sneered. Needless to say, they must be waiting for us. Then let them wait a little longer. Fatso smirked, glanced at the 2 sides of the street, and locked his eyes on a shop on the left, and said, Boss, there's a clothing shop. Shall we go in and shop? Okay, I'm also planning to buy some clothes. Qin Feiyang nodded, under the astonished gaze of the first prince and Lin Hao. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 went directly into the shop. These 3 brats are really a headache. Shi Zhang shook his head and smiled bitterly and could only follow in. After buying clothes, they entered a shop that sold shoes. After buying shoes, the first prince and Lin Hao thought that they were coming, but they didn't expect that they would enter a jewelry shop. Your Highness, They must be doing it on purpose. Lin Hao roared angrily. Even if it's on purpose, you have to bear with it. The first prince said in a low voice, his hands hidden in his sleeves, tightly clenched. Obviously, he was also very angry. Your Highness, what are you doing here? At this moment, a puzzled voice sounded. A young man in purple walked out of the crowd and strode towards the first prince. Behind him, there was a man and a woman, both of whom were in their late 20s and had extraordinary temperaments. The first prince smiled. Shuiyang, why are you here? Shuiyang said, I brought Junior Xie and Junior Wang to sign up for the competition. The first prince glanced at the man and woman, and his eyes flashed slightly. He looked at Shuiyang and said, Jiang Haoyan is in that jewelry shop. Go and see what they are doing. Lin Hao added, if there's a chance, teach them a lesson. Jiang Haoyan. Shuiyang's eyes suddenly surged with strong killing intent, and he sneered, Your Highness, don't worry, leave it to me. Let's go. Chapter 182. Inside the shop, Qin Feiyang was casually looking at the accessories. The shop owner was also a middle-aged fatso, but he was not as outstanding as Fatso. He followed him closely and kept introducing the items. Fatso called out, Boss, it's time to go. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The fat shop owner immediately showed a disappointed look. This was a big customer, but unfortunately, he did not sell anything. Qin Feiyang was about to turn around when he suddenly saw a red jade pendant. The fat shop owner's eyes lit up and hurriedly introduced it. Young Master Jiang, this jade pendant is called Flaming Phoenix. Look at its color, how bright it is, and the phoenix pattern, how charming it is. To be honest, young Master Jiang, the Flaming Phoenix is the most famous carving master in Yen City, carefully carved with the best fire jade. Let's not talk about its value, just its craftsmanship alone is worth collecting. The fat shop owner's mouth was like a river, exaggerating. Qin Feiyang asked, Just say it, how much is it? The fat shop owner stretched out his hand. 500,000. 500,000? Fatso shouted and walked over. He looked at the so-called Flaming Phoenix and mocked. We're not idiots. If you don't give us a reasonable price, we'll leave immediately. The fat shop owner smiled and said, For 100,000, no less. Fatso sneered. It's more profitable than selling elixirs. 50,000 at most. Sell it or not. The fat shop owner's face twitched, and he smiled bitterly. Brother Fatty, your bargaining is too outrageous. His eyes were full of resentment, as if to say, Brother Fatty, we're all Fatso. Why do you have to make things difficult for Fatso? Forget it if you don't want to sell. Fatso ignored the resentful eyes and dragged Qin Feiyang outside. The fat shop owner gritted his teeth and said, Young Master Jiang, I'll sell it even if I lose money. 50,000 it is. That's more like it. Fatso smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang asked, Do you have any more? If there's only one, I don't want it. Hearing this, the fat boss's face became very interesting, because the more he sold, the more he would lose. But he really wanted to do business with Qin Feiyang. He gritted his teeth and nodded. Yes, there are 4 more. Fatso angrily said, Fuck, haven't you heard that the rarer something is, the more precious it is? You have so many here, and you still want to collect them? Even Fat Lord doesn't think 50,000 gold coins is worth it. The fat boss said bitterly, My fat lord, I'm really selling at a loss. I swear to God. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Okay, help me wrap it up. All right. The fat boss ran off to get busy. Qin Feiyang took out the Qinquan bag and looked at it carefully. A row of black lines immediately appeared on his forehead. In such a large Qinquan bag, there was not even a single gold coin. He looked at Fatso and said angrily, Didn't I say very clearly that you would leave me some pocket money? Now, I don't even have a single silver coin. How do you want me to pay the bill? Qin Feiyang and Shi Zheng were stunned. The fat boss was also petrified on the spot. A dignified, supreme-grade alchemist actually had no money? Fatso shrunk his neck and said with an embarrassed smile, "The financial power is now in Lu Hong's hands. Fat Lord can't make the decision. If you want to settle the score, go to her." Qin Feiyang's veins were bulging. This guy was really a fraud. He had lost all his face. "Jiang Haoyan, you're too shabby. You're an alchemist after all. Do you want me to lend you some?" At this moment, Shui Yang walked in with a man and a woman. Fatso frowned and said in a low voice, "Boss, he's Shui Yang. The other two are also core disciples of the Danwang Hall. The man is Xia Fang and the woman is Wang Xia." Qin Feiyang said, "I know he's Shui Yang. I've seen him in the treasure pavilion before." Shui Yang glanced at them, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said playfully, "How about it? Do you want it? I don't charge interest." Shi Zheng walked up and said lightly, "Isn't it just 250,000 gold coins? I'll give it to you." A cold light flashed in the depths of Shui Yang's eyes. He looked at the fat boss and said, "No matter what Jiang Haoyan buys, I'll take it all and give you double the price." The fat boss was a little embarrassed. He didn't dare to offend Qin Feiyang. Shui Yang was Jia Hei's personal disciple. He also didn't dare to offend him. He begged, "Young Master Shui, if you have any grudges with young Master Jiang, can you settle it elsewhere? I'm just a small businessman. Don't make things difficult for me, okay?" "Why? Do you have a big objection?" Shui Yang's eyes were unfriendly. "No, no, no. How would I dare to have an objection?" The fat boss hurriedly waved his hand and looked at Qin Feiyang pleadingly. He hoped that Qin Feiyang could take a step back. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and said, "It seems that the lesson I taught you last time wasn't deep enough." At the mention of this, Shui Yang's face became incomparably ferocious. Qin Feiyang turned a blind eye and said lightly, "You want whatever I want. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Shui Yang said word by word. His heart was already occupied by hatred. "Fine, you're awesome." Qin Feiyang gave a thumbs up and turned to look at the fat boss, saying, "I want everything you have here. Listen well, everything." The fat boss was dumbfounded. "This is a great move," Shi Zheng praised. This way, not only could he help the fat boss out of the predicament, but he could also ruthlessly scam Shui Yang. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Shui Yang clenched his fists, his gaze frighteningly gloomy. "Yo!" Fatso let out a strange cry and joked. "Young Master Shui, why aren't you saying anything? Fat Lord, let me remind you that you're Jia Hei's disciple. If you don't keep your word, you won't be the only one losing face, but your master will too," Shui Yang said sternly. "Fatso, say one more word and I'll cripple you." Come. If you don't cripple me today, you'll be Fat Lord's great-grandson." Fatso took a step forward and provoked arrogantly, "You're courting death." Shui Yang's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness, but just as he raised his hand, it was grabbed by Xia Fang, who shook his head and said, "Brother Shui, don't be provoked by him." Wang Xia nodded and said, "The palace is just next door. If you fight here, even Elder Jia won't be able to save you. It won't hurt to endure it for a while." Fatso immediately gave the two of them a thumbs up and chuckled. "I'll give you a thumbs up." Xia Fang and Wang Xia raised their eyebrows and a cold light flashed in their eyes. "Boring." Fatso waved his hand in disdain and looked at Shui Yang. "They're right. Just endure it. You're just a coward anyway." Xia Fang frowned and said, "Fatso, don't go overboard." Fatso shouted, Fat Lord thought you were very smart. So you're an idiot too. Do you want to stand up for him?" Xia Fang said, "If you're so capable, let's meet in the competition. Don't just talk here." Fatso sized him up and said, "I'm sorry. Fat Lord's motto has always been to avoid violence if he can talk." After some thought, he added, "Besides, you can't even win against him in words. What right do you have to fight with Fat Lord? Go take a piss and look at your reflection." Siafong's eyes were burning with anger. This damned Fatso's mouth really needs to be taught a lesson. Seeing that Siafong was also enraged, Wang Xia's pupils constricted, and she hurriedly dragged the two of them outside. Fatso twisted his neck and said indifferently, "People with low IQ shouldn't come out for a stroll, lest they embarrass themselves. Bastard, I'm going to destroy you." Shuiyang and Siafong roared at the same time and turned to charge at Fatso. Even Wang Xia couldn't hold them back. "Stop!" At this moment, a cold shout sounded. The eldest prince and Lin Hao walked in one after another. The main character is here. Fatso tactfully retreated to Qin Feiyang's side. The eldest prince coldly glanced at Shuiyang and the other two and said angrily, "What's going on? How dare you fight here? Do you want to die? Keep pretending, keep pretending." Fatso sneered. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Shuiyang and the other two were ordered by someone, and the person who ordered them was undoubtedly the eldest prince. Shuiyang glared at Qin Feiyang and the others and said, "Your Highness, it's all their fault for provoking us first. Especially that Fatso. He's so arrogant and even humiliated you, Your Highness." The eldest prince turned to look at Fatso with a cold gaze. Shizheng frowned and said expressionlessly, "Think before you speak." Shuiyang said angrily, "Elder Shi, you're with them. Of course you'll speak for them." "Bastard!" Shizheng was furious. He stepped forward and grabbed Shuiyang's arm, saying, "I'll take you to the Danwang Hall now. I'd like to ask Elder Jia how he educates his disciples." Shuiyang's face immediately turned pale. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, "Your Highness, how do you plan to deal with the troublemakers? If you don't deal with them, I'm afraid your reputation as the eldest prince will be ruined today." The eldest prince was furious to the extreme. He wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss and frustrate Qin Feiyang, but he didn't expect that he would end up digging his own grave. Because if this matter really blew up, they would be the ones to suffer. After all, the boss of this shop had witnessed the entire process. Although he could threaten the fat boss, Qin Feiyang and the others also had the martial imperial hall behind them. Therefore, the fat boss would definitely tell the truth in the end. Slap! The eldest prince slapped Shuiyang's face without hesitation. A bright red palm print instantly appeared. Shuiyang was stunned, but the eldest prince didn't care about him. He looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "Brother Jiang, are you satisfied?" "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang asked. Slap! The eldest prince slapped Siafong and Wang Xiao again and asked with a smile, "What about now?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "Your Highness is selfless. I admire you." The eldest prince said, "That's what I should do. I wonder why Brother Jiang came to the East District. If I can help, please feel free to ask. If I really need your Highness' help, I will definitely not be polite." Qin Feiyang smiled and turned to the fat boss, asking, "Boss, is it done?" "It's done." The fat boss pushed an exquisite wooden box in front of Qin Feiyang with a trace of gratitude in his eyes. Shizheng let go of Shuiyang and went over to settle the bill. He looked at Shuiyang and said, "Young people should learn to be good. Don't just sow discord all day. It won't do you any good in the future." Elder Shi is right. The eldest prince smiled and shouted at Shuiyang and the others, "Why aren't you apologizing to Elder Shi?" "Elder Shi, I'm sorry. Elder Shi, please forgive me for my previous offense." The three of them bowed. Shizheng said, "Forget it, this matter is over." "Thank you for your magnanimity, Elder Shi." Chapter 183. Fighting with us is simply looking for a beating. Fatso laughed, gloatingly. Let's go. Qin Feiyang put away the wooden box, nodded and smiled at the eldest prince, then called Fatso and the other two and strode out of the jewelry shop. Let's go too. The eldest prince waved his hand. After the two groups of people left, the fat boss breathed a sigh of relief. Shui Yang rubbed his burning face and stared at Qin Feiyang and the others in front of him, his eyes filled with hostility. The eldest prince sighed and said, I had no choice but to hit you just now. Please forgive me. It's okay. Shui Yang and the other two shook their heads. The eldest prince whispered, Don't worry. I will definitely avenge you in the competition. Xie Fang sneered and said, If they participate in the competition, you don't need to show up. I can beat them. Wang Xia nodded and said, Yes, it is said that Jiang Haoyan is only an 8-star martial master. There is nothing to worry about. The eldest prince looked at the two of them in surprise and said with a smile, If you can really do it, I will reward each of you with a top-grade red fire glass pill. Thank you, Your Highness. The two of them were overjoyed and hurriedly bowed to thank him. The eldest prince nodded and caught up with Qin Feiyang in a few steps. He smiled and said, Brother Jiang, I wonder if my top-grade red fire glass pill is ready. Oh, Qin Feiyang patted his head and said in distress, Your Highness, I'm really sorry. I've been too busy these days and forgot about it. When I go back, I'll immediately start refining pills. The eldest prince raised his eyebrows and waved his hand and said with a smile, It's okay, as long as you give it to me before I get married. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, It definitely won't delay Your Highness's marriage. Right now, he only had a total of 6 top-grade red fire glass pills. If he gave it to the eldest prince, there would only be one left. To be honest, he really didn't want to give it to the eldest prince. But with his current strength, he couldn't swallow these 5 top-grade red fire glass pills. Look, isn't that Luo Qingzhu? Suddenly, Lin Hao pointed to the front, his eyes full of surprise. Everyone looked over. 2 white-clothed girls walked hand in hand in the crowd, forming a beautiful scene that attracted the gazes of countless men. She's here too? Qin Feiyang was surprised. One of them was indeed Luo Qingzhu, and the girl beside her was Zhao Shuang, little sister Qingzhu. The first prince's eyes lit up. He stretched out his hand and called out to her affectionately. Then he strode after her. Lin Hao, Shuiyang, and the other 2 quickly followed. Sister Qingzhu? Fatso was stunned and said angrily, Boss, he actually dared to tease your wife. Even if he's the first prince, we can't tolerate it. Go and kill him. Qin Feiyang's face twitched, and he gave Fatso a knock on the head. Ouch. Fatso howled in pain and said, Boss, why did you hit Fat Lord? Is Fat Lord wrong? Qin Feiyang said with a dark face, I'll tell you again. Whether it's Lin Yi or Luo Qingzhu, our relationship is innocent. Explaining is tantamount to covering up. Fatso pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang's veins were bulging. He raised his head and wanted to knock on Fatso's head again. But when he saw Fatso's pitiful look, he couldn't do it. Shi Zheng said in surprise, Jiang Haoyan, do you know Luo Qingzhu? We've met a few times. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, More than a few times. They are about to get married privately. I guess they will have a baby in a few years. Fatso murmured in a low voice. Uft. Ling Yunfei couldn't help but laugh. This Fatso is too funny. Shi Zheng also couldn't help laughing. I really owe you in my previous life. Qin Feiyang glared at Fatso. He also felt powerless against this bastard. In front, the first prince laughed. Little sister Qingzhu, why are you here? Who is this beautiful lady? Luo Qingzhu smiled faintly. She is a core disciple of the martial imperial palace in Star Moon City, called Zhao Shuang. We are only here to play in Yen City, and just happened to hear that you were holding a competition, so we came over to take a look out of curiosity." She then looked at Zhao Shuang, and introduced him. "Little sister Shuang, he is the first prince that I mentioned to you before." Shuang, greets the first prince. Zhao Shuang bowed. The first prince waved his hand and laughed. "Miss Shuang, we are all on the same side. There is no need to be so polite." However, the first prince did not notice that although Luo Qingzhu and Luo Qingzhu were talking to him, their gazes would occasionally sweep towards Qin Feiyong, who was behind them. Qin Feiyong walked over with a faint smile on his face. But suddenly, Lin Hao stood in front of him and said disdainfully, "Do you know who she is? Don't try to claim connections." Qin Feiyong was stunned. Luo Qingzhu and Luo Qingzhu were also stunned. Whoosh! A figure swept past the two of them and ran in front of Luo Qingzhu. It was Fatso. He looked at Luo Qingzhu with a fawning smile and said, "Sister-in-law, you're finally here. You don't know how much boss misses you. He misses you every day. Bastard, have you had enough?" Qin Feiyong angrily roared and went forward to kick him. Fatso hid behind Luo Qingzhu like a wisp of smoke and made a face at him. "Sister-in-law?" Everyone present was stunned, including the surrounding pedestrians. Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang were the same. Qin Feiyong glared at Fatso, looked at Luo Qingzhu apologetically, and laughed. "I'm sorry, he likes to mess around. It's fine, it's fine." Luo Qingzhu shook her head, still unable to react. "Messing around?" The first prince frowned. It should be. Luo Qingzhu had been in Star Moon City all year round. How could she know Jiang Haotian? It was even more impossible for them to have such an ambiguous relationship. He smiled and said, "Little sister Qingzhu, let me introduce you. He is the famous Jiang Haotian. This relationship is a bit complicated." Zhao Shuang looked at the first prince and the others, and a strange light flashed in her beautiful eyes. Then she looked at Jiang Haotian and said with a playful smile, "Long time no see. I heard that you're doing well here, so I discussed with Sister Qingzhu and came to find you to eat and drink. Do you welcome us?" "Of course you're welcome." Qin Feiyong laughed. The first prince raised his eyebrows and asked, "Little sister Qingzhu, do you know each other?" Luo Qingzhu finally came back to her senses and nodded. "We've known each other for a long time." At that moment, the first prince's expression changed. After all this time, it was just his wishful thinking? Especially Lin Hao. It was as if he had been slapped hard in the face. His face was burning hot. The two of them had known each other for a long time, and their relationship was not shallow. However, he had stood in front of the other party and told the other party not to claim any relationship. This was really ironic. The atmosphere here was a bit awkward. Luo Qingzhu looked at the two groups of people and roughly understood what was going on. She asked, "Your Highness, I wonder if I can participate in the competition." The first prince was stunned and asked doubtfully, "Why do you want to participate? If you want something, just ask me directly." Luo Qingzhu said with a faint smile, "We've known each other for so long, don't you understand me? I like to rely on my own efforts to fight for it." The first prince hesitated for a moment and nodded. "All right, I'll take you to sign up. Brother Jiang, what about you? Are you interested? The rewards this time are very rich." Qin Feiyong said with a smile, "Since that's the case, I'll give it a try." The first prince and the others were overjoyed. The previous unhappiness was instantly thrown to the back of their minds. They couldn't wait to lead the few people to the square. On the left side of the square, there was a hall. A group of people walked in. In addition to Qin Feiyong, Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuang had also signed up. As for Fatso, no matter how Xia Fang provoked him, he had an extremely contemptuous expression. Xia Fang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Walking out of the hall, Qin Feiyong stood on a step and asked, Your Highness, when will it start? The first prince said with a smile, It can start at any time. But in his heart he sneered. I'm waiting for you. Qin Feiyang said, Then hurry up. After all, I'm very busy and don't have time to delay here. All right. The first prince nodded and shouted. Commander Su immediately arranged for the elimination round to begin immediately. Yes, a loud and clear voice sounded, following closely. A burly man in armor walked out of the main hall with a bold and resolute manner. He jumped a few times and landed on a high platform in front of the square. He shouted, The elimination round is about to begin. Participants, enter the square immediately. At that moment, one by one, the teenagers ran into the square. Those who didn't participate quickly left the square. At the same time, from the gate of the palace, a large group of black-armored guards emerged. They were like a group of lions. They quickly dispersed and stood at the edge of the square, expressionlessly scanning the crowd below. Jiang Haoqian, Ling Yunfei, be careful. Shi Zheng warned, and also left the square with Fatso. Let's go. Qin Feiyang walked down the steps and entered the square. Ling Yunfei followed closely. Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang'er nodded to the first prince and also entered the square, standing in the crowd. The first prince glanced at Qin Feiyang and warned Wang Xia and Xia Fang. Don't touch him first. On the day of the finals, we'll ruthlessly trample on him. But we can test his depth first. As for the trash next to him, get him out of the arena as soon as possible. He was referring to Ling Yunfei. Understood. Xia Fang and Luo Qingzhu nodded, a cold light flashing in their eyes. Subsequently, Shui Yang and Lin Hao followed behind the first prince and walked up the high platform. The square suddenly quieted down. The first prince stood in the middle of the high platform and glanced at the crowd below. His robe fluttered in the wind, and his whole body emitted the aura of a king. There are a total of more than 1,300 people participating in this competition, but only 10 people can enter the finals. So, everyone must work hard. I also ask everyone to stop before it's too late and try not to do anything to hurt the other party. I believe everyone already knows the prizes of this competition. I won't explain more, just say one thing. In the elimination round, no weapons are allowed. Those who violate this rule will be disqualified. Finished. He retreated to the side with his hands behind his back. Looking at Qin Feiyang in the crowd, he secretly sneered. Without that dagger, I want to see what big waves you can make. Commander Su took a few steps forward and shouted, Are you all ready? We're ready. Thousands of teenagers roared as if they had been injected with chicken blood. For Qin Feiyang, the royal banquet didn't have the slightest attraction. But for the vast majority of people, being able to participate in the royal banquet was a supreme honor. Chapter 184. Let the elimination round begin. Following Commander Su's words, everyone exerted all their strength and attacked the people around them. Bang, bang, bang. Ah, someone won. Someone was bound to be defeated. In an instant, there were endless screams. One by one, the teenagers fell down. Almost in the blink of an eye, half of the people were eliminated. The battle was cruel. Especially in this kind of chaotic battle, if one was not careful, one would be attacked and lose the qualification to continue. At the same time, Qin Feiyang was also besieged. Ling Yunfei fought against dozens of people and had the upper hand. Qin Feiyang did not make a move from beginning to end. He stood in the field and glanced at the chaotic crowd. His eyes were as calm as water. How dare you be so arrogant in this chaotic battle? You're courting death. When a tall and sturdy man noticed Qin Feiyang, his eyes immediately flashed with a ruthless look. Seeing that Ling Yunfei was more than 10 meters away and was entangled by two people, he took a step forward and charged towards Qin Feiyang. However, Without waiting for him to get close, Ling Yunfei appeared in front of him like a flash of lightning. With a palm strike, the afterimages of 9 huge palms struck towards him, covering the sky and the earth. It was the illusion palm. As soon as Ling Yunfei entered the martial imperial palace, he became a core disciple and had already learned the illusion palm. How is this possible? The burly man's face was filled with disbelief. Previously, he was entangled by others, but in an instant he rushed over. This speed was too fast. With your little ability, you dare to sneak attack him? Ling Yunfei's eyes were filled with disdain as his palm landed on the burly man's chest. Ah! The burly man screamed and was blown away on the spot, spitting out blood. The few unlucky ones behind him were also seriously injured and fell to the ground. Cripple him! A group of teenagers suddenly swarmed towards Ling Yunfei. Cripple me? Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Ling Yunfei smiled coldly and punched out with his heart-lock-killing fist. A teenager's heart was shattered and he fell to the ground dead. What? Dead? The others trembled, both physically and mentally, as their faces turned ghastly pale. The battlefield needs to be watered with blood. Stop when it's appropriate? That's all bullshit. Ling Yunfei's long sky-blue hair danced behind his head like a waterfall, and his entire body emitted an astonishing aura. Using the origin convergence steps, he was like a hungry wolf that had charged into a flock of sheep. For a moment, this place was in complete chaos. Without exception, those who were struck by him were either killed or injured. His entire body was covered in blood like a blood-soaked azura. The people around him were scared out of their wits and fled in panic. On the high platform, the eldest prince's shock was clearly written on his face. All this time he had never taken Ling Yunfei seriously and had only regarded him as a small fry. But he never thought that he would be so strong. It was also at this moment. Qin Feiyang, who hadn't moved for a long time, shook his head and said, "That's all." Previously, he was observing everyone's strength. He wanted to see what kind of opponent the first prince had prepared for him. In the end, he was greatly disappointed. There were more than 1,300 people, and none of them was a martial grandmaster. The highest was a 9-star martial master. Even the number of 9-star martial masters could be counted on one hand. But thinking about it, it made sense. In a small place like the county of Yan, it was rare for someone to step into the martial grandmaster realm before the age of 18. Only a martial arts genius like Feng Ling Er could do it. An elimination round without a martial grandmaster was nothing to worry about. It seems that I don't need to take part in this battle. Glancing at Ling Yunfei, Qin Feiyang muttered and turned to look at Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuangshuang. His face couldn't help but twitch. Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuangshuang stood there motionless, but the people around them acted as if they didn't see anything. No one attacked them. Qin Feiyang was filled with emotions. Beautiful women were treated differently, but he also knew that the biggest reason was Luo Qingzhu's identity. Who would dare to touch the precious daughter of the Precious Treasure Pavilion's pavilion master? Once one was blacklisted by the Precious Treasure Pavilion, it would be worse than being blacklisted by the Danwang Hall, the Martial Imperial Hall, or the royal family. Because as long as one was a martial artist, they needed wealth and resources. The Precious Treasure Pavilion was undoubtedly the source of wealth and resources. Jiang Haotian, fight me if you dare! Suddenly, a loud and cold shout rang out. A purple-clothed youth appeared extremely valiant as he walked towards Qin Feiyang as if there was no one around him. Hiding behind Ling Yunfei, what kind of man are you? If you think that you can enter the finals like this, I can tell you very seriously, dream on. At the same time, there were also 3 youths in luxurious clothes. They were like 3 human-shaped tyrannosauruses. They continuously sent people in front of them flying, emitting a strong aura as they pressed towards Qin Feiyang. Their gazes were extremely sharp. Qin Feiyang was stunned and turned his head to look at them one by one. The four of them looked slightly mature. They were obviously almost 18 years old and had the strength of a 9-star martial master. In Yen City, they could be considered top geniuses. Seeing this, Zhao Shuang smiled playfully. Jiang Haoyan, do you need help? What do you think? Qin Feiyang grinned. You are still so arrogant. Zhao Shuang rolled her eyes at him, but this kind of man was more charming. Humph! Ling Yunfei snorted and quickly came in front of Qin Feiyang. He glanced at the four people and said, disdainfully, just 4 trash. You don't need to do anything. I will handle it. Arrogant. The cold light in the eyes of the 4 people surged. Ling Yunfei, arrogance will pay the price. We will fight with you. At this time, Xia Fang and Wang Xia rushed out of the crowd, stepping on the shoulders of the crowd and rushing over. Ling Yunfei said, It seems that these people have been bribed by the first prince. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, as expected, not only them, those who just attacked us probably got a lot of benefits. In that case, we don't need to be merciful. Ling Yunfei sneered. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. It seemed that this guy had never been merciful, right? He asked. Your strength seems to have become stronger. I forgot to tell you. Yesterday, I stepped into the 9-star martial master and finally surpassed you. Ling Yunfei smiled proudly. Surpassed? Qin Feiyang was stunned. The corner of his mouth pursed into a playful smile. He chuckled and said, Let me tell you a secret. Before I went to Black Bear City, I was already a 9-star martial master. What? Ling Yunfei was dumbfounded. His heart was instantly filled with loss. Surpassing Qin Feiyang had always been his wish. He thought that he had done it this time, but he didn't expect that the other party was still 1 step ahead of him. This feeling was really unbearable. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Suddenly, he let out a low roar. His heart was filled with unwillingness and disappointment. It turned into a monstrous battle intent and welcomed the 2 of them. Although he couldn't compare to Qin Feiyang, he was determined to be the number 1 person under Qin Feiyang. What Xia Fang? What Wang Xia? Trample them all under his feet. Bang! Bang! The 3 of them fought crazily. When the others saw this, they retreated one after another, giving them a wide battlefield. They are both 9-star martial masters, but this child is facing 2 opponents alone. His expression doesn't change at all. His battle intent is endless. This Ling Yunfei is very likely to become the 2nd Feng Ling heir. He entered the martial ancestor realm before the age of 18, the future proud son of Yen County. The crowd below the stage discussed in low voices, their eyes filled with shock. Shi Zheng was also very surprised. He only knew that Ling Yunfei's talent was not bad and that he had a good relationship with Jiang Haoyan, but he didn't expect his talent to be so heaven-defying. He had been in the Martial Imperial Hall for less than a year, and he already had such strength. He might even surpass Feng Ling heir in the future. Zhao Shuang walked to Qin Feiyang and asked curiously, Where did you find this helper? Luo Qingzhu said, He is from the Ling family of Black Bear City. When I went to Black Bear City, I heard that he was called trash. But now it seems that he doesn't live up to his name. If the Ling family had nurtured him since he was young, his achievements wouldn't be limited to this. Qin Feiyang shook his head and ridiculed. The Ling family probably didn't realize how valuable Ling Yunfei was until they were destroyed. With his talent and potential, even in the imperial capital, he was a top martial arts genius. Even Feng Ling heir couldn't compare to him. Luo Qingzhu turned to look at Qin Feiyang, a strange light flashing in her beautiful eyes. If she didn't meet this person, Ling Yunfei would still be the trash in Black Bear City. He wouldn't have the chance to shine here today. It could be said that this person was Ling Yunfei's talent scout. But she was very curious. Ling Yunfei had lived in Black Bear City for more than 10 years, and no one had discovered his potential. But how did this person find it at a glance? Was it because he was very good at judging people? Or was it because he had seen too many geniuses? At this time, the 4 well-dressed youths surrounded him. Glancing at Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuanger, one of them said coldly, "Get out of the way!" "Okay." Zhao Shuanger nodded and pulled Luo Qingzhu to the side. After a year, how much had this guy grown? She was really looking forward to it. The 4 people spread out, and each took a side, surrounding Qin Feiyang in the center. The youth in purple sneered, "Jiang Haotian, this young master wants to know if your strength can compare to your alchemy skills." "I don't think I will disappoint you." Qin Feiyang put his hands behind his back with a faint smile on his face. "Return to origin palm." The young master in purple looked cold and suddenly waved his palm, blowing a hurricane. When it blew on his face, there was a pain of skin tearing. This palm, it was really amazing. It had the strength of 13 brute elephants. The Lin family? Qin Feiyang was surprised. He didn't expect that the Lin family was hiding such a genius. Swish! He took a step back, his clothes rustling, and his expression was as calm as water. Illusion palm. Seeing this, the youth behind Qin Feiyang didn't hesitate to slap. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and stepped on the ground, moving to the left. He calmly turned around and looked at that person suspiciously. "Don't say that I'm a traitor. Because you're not a disciple of the Martial Imperial Palace, I don't need to help you. And because you're the biggest threat, I can only join hands with them to eliminate you first." Chapter 185. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang's brows also relaxed. This person was 100% bought by the first prince, but he was too lazy to point out. He was too lazy to talk nonsense. Overlord Fist. The other 2 youths also attacked Qin Feiyang. Fatso reminded, "Boss, be careful. The Overlord Fist is the perfect martial skill of the royal family. It is said to be very fierce." Commander Su frowned and shouted, "The people outside are not allowed to interrupt." TSK. Fatso disdainfully raised his middle finger. Commander Su's veins were bulging. The commander of the royal guards was actually humiliated by a brat in public. He was really angry. "Fatso, behave," Zhou scolded in a low voice, then looked at Commander Su and smiled apologetically. "Humph." Commander Su snorted and continued to scan the battlefield. He secretly despised him for doing such an indecent action in public. He really couldn't understand why the Martial Imperial Hall would take in such an uncultured person. On the field, when the 2 youths of the royal family attacked, the 2 youths of the Lin family and the Martial Imperial Hall immediately surrounded him. The Overlord Fist was incomparably fierce. The Illusion Palm was mysterious and unpredictable. The Return to Origin Palm was incomparably fierce. 4 9-star martial masters, 3 perfect martial skills, and their true chi covered the sky and earth, almost cutting off all of Qin Feiyang's escape routes. The first prince and the other 2 on the high platform couldn't help but smile. Although it was just to test Qin Feiyang's strength, if he could make a fool of himself in front of everyone, it was still something to be happy about. Zhao Shuang frowned and said in a low voice, "Let's go help him." Luo Qingzhu nodded and suddenly grabbed Zhao Shuang and said, "Look at his expression." Expression? Zhao Shuang was stunned. She looked at Qin Feiyang's face and suddenly felt surprised. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's expression didn't have the slightest bit of panic. He was still so calm and relaxed. Where is his confidence? Zhao Shuang was suspicious. If it was someone else facing the siege of the 4 youths, they would have been scared witless. However, This fellow didn't seem to take it to heart. In the blink of an eye, the four of them had ominous glints in their eyes. They were only half a step away from Qin Feiyong. He was about to be beaten up. Whoosh! At this moment, Qin Feiyong took a step forward, and with a strange speed he passed by the two young men from the Martial Emperor Hall and the royal family, leaving the encirclement. That's right, his confidence comes from his auxiliary martial skills. Zhao Shuang'er's eyes lit up. How could this be? However, the four people's expressions suddenly changed. He quickly retracted his hand, but it was too late. The fist and the palm collided with each other. Their faces paled as their arms broke on the spot. In the meantime, like four meteorites, they flew out horizontally, accompanied by a series of banging sounds. It smashed onto the ground more than 10 meters away. Puff! Immediately, a gush of hot blood rushed up to his throat, and he violently spat it out. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. There were even some people whose eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. Dead silence. They all thought that this time, Qin Feiyong would lose a layer of skin, even if he did not die. But in the end, not only did he dodge it easily, but he also seriously injured the four of them without any effort. Even during the entire process, he had his hands behind his back. Everyone could only see calmness, composure, and confidence from him. The smiles on the faces of the eldest prince, Shuiyang and Lin Hao, also froze. For 9-star martial masters were injured just like that? This was too ridiculous. One had to know that Qin Feiyong had not even made a move yet. Ah! At this moment, 2 more screams were heard. Everyone looked over and was stunned once again. Xie Fang and Wang Xia were both defeated by Ling Yunfei. The two of them were lying on the ground, their faces as pale as paper. Their bodies were twitching nonstop, and their mouths were foaming with blood. On the other hand, although Ling Yunfei was also injured, his eyes were like torches, and his spirit was hale and hearty. His fighting spirit was even stronger than before. Why did this happen? The eldest prince clenched his hands tightly together, his face gloomy to the extreme. Xie Fang and Wang Xia stood up and stared at Ling Yunfei with eyes full of disbelief. The same cultivation level, the same perfect martial skill. But why were the two of them still defeated by Ling Yunfei even when they joined hands? Ling Yunfei looked at the two of them with contempt, turned around and walked to Qin Feiyong and said with an evil smile, "How is it?" Amazing. Qin Feiyong gave him a thumbs up. Ling Yunfei twisted his arm and chuckled. "I haven't had enough fun yet. Don't make a move next. I alone am enough to deal with them." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "Didn't you see? I haven't made a move yet." Ugh! Ling Yunfei was stunned. Looking at Qin Feiyong's hands behind his back, he immediately laughed out loud. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. In such a chaotic battlefield, the two of them still had the mood to talk and laugh there. It was enough to see how confident they were in themselves, and how disdainful they were to the other contestants. It was as if in their eyes, this competition was just a boring game. The eldest prince and the other two on the high platform, Xie Fang and the other 5 on the field, were all red in the face, because Ling Yunfei's laughter was too ear-piercing. It was simply mocking their incompetence. Xie Fang and the other 5 looked at each other from a distance, and at the same time they took out a supreme grade healing pill and a bone replenishing pill and consumed it. A shocking cold light flashed in their eyes. Fatso cried out, some people fought with Jiang Lauda, and in the end they even took the pills refined by Jiang Lauda. Isn't this embarrassing? Fat Lord thinks that he is already very shameless, but I didn't expect that there would be someone more shameless than Fat Lord. No, it should be called despicable. In front of countless people, Fatso ridiculed without restraint, and his saliva splattered everywhere. Xie Fang and the other 5 looked at him in unison, and their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Commander Su also looked at Fatso and said gloomily, "I've already said that the people outside the field are not allowed to interrupt. Did you forget? Do you want me to teach you a lesson?" "Lord Commander, you're in the wrong here. Did you hear Fat Lord mention names?" "Fat Lord is talking about some people. It could be him, or it could be him." "How can you be so sure that Fat Lord is talking about the people on the field?" "Sir Commander, you represent the royal family. Is it really okay to make things out of nothing and slander others?" Fatso said earnestly, "I made things out of nothing. I slandered others." Commander Su was stunned when he heard it. When he came to his senses, a strong anger suddenly rose from his body. Fatso shrunk his neck and hid behind Shizhang. He stuck his head out and said with a trembling voice, "Sir Commander, Fat Lord is just talking about the facts. Don't bully others with your power." "Damn Fatso, get over here and accept your death." Commander Su was seething with anger. "Bullying the weak, what kind of man are you?" Fatso said angrily. This time, on the contrary, Fatso became the focus of everyone's attention. Even those teenagers who were fighting on the field stopped and looked at Fatso speechlessly. How could there be such a person in the world? Commander Su clenched his hands, and his whole body was trembling with anger. "I can't take it anymore." Suddenly, he let out an angry roar and jumped down from the high platform. Then, he rushed towards the fatty with a ferocious aura. "Look, the palace commander is bullying others. The face of the royal family has been lost by him." Fatso hurriedly shouted. The eldest prince shouted, "Commander Su, come back!" However, Commander Su turned a deaf ear to him. He only had eyes for Fatso and wanted to cut him into pieces. "I told you to come back, didn't you hear me?" the eldest prince shouted. Commander Su quivered and suddenly came back to his senses. At that moment, his whole body was dripping with cold sweat. He secretly cursed. How could he be so stupid? If he really made a move here, then he would be knowingly breaking the law, which would add to his crime. This damned fat pig really had sinister intentions. Phew! He let out a long breath, turned around and jumped onto the high platform, bowed and said, "I was confused for a moment. Please forgive me, Your Highness." The eldest prince waved his hand and said, "Step aside." "Yes." Commander Su responded respectfully and retreated behind the eldest prince. He raised his head and looked at Fatso. The murderous intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. "Count yourself lucky." Fatso snorted coldly. Don't think that he was really fooling around. In fact, he was very smart. The eldest prince took a step forward and coldly glanced at the square below. More than 1,300 people. Until now, only 50 or 60 people were left. Except for Qin Feiyang, Luo Qianxue, and Zhao Shuang'er, the others were all injured. He silently calculated in his heart and shouted, "Continue!" At the same time, he gave a look to Xie Fang and the others. The battle immediately began. But Xie Fang and the others did not deal with Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei anymore. Like hungry tigers pouncing on sheep, they rushed to kill the others. "What's going on?" Ling Yunfei was a little stunned. "Isn't it because we're afraid of you?" Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang'er walked over with a faint smile on their faces. "Afraid of us?" Ling Yunfei was slightly stunned, and then suddenly understood and said with an evil smile, "It's normal to be afraid of us." Normal? Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang'er were a little speechless. This person was really narcissistic. These kind of pampered young masters and young ladies will not understand the taste of people like us who crawled out from a pile of corpses. Ling Yunfei coldly laughed. "That's true." Zhao Shuang'er nodded. One was pampered since childhood. The other lived on the edge of life and death since childhood. The difference between the two was not just a little. especially the temperament and the state of the battle. While the four were chatting, Xia Fong and the others soon eliminated the rest of the participants. Although they were not the opponents of Qin Feiyang and Luo Qianxue, but to deal with the other youths, they could completely crush them. At this point, on the blood-stained square, only Qin Feiyang and the others were left. The eldest prince walked to the edge of the high platform and glanced at the 10 people. His gaze locked onto Ling Yunfei, and he coldly said, "Your right to participate in the competition is revoked." "Revoked?" Ling Yunfei frowned and asked, "Why?" The eldest prince said, "I already said that you should stop when the time is right, but you ignored my order and deliberately harmed people's lives. Shouldn't you be disqualified? If I don't revoke your right, how can I convince the others?" Xia Fong and the others immediately laughed at his misfortune. What a joke! Qin Feiyang suddenly sneered and walked in front of Ling Yunfei, looked up at the eldest prince and said lightly, "Your Highness, think about it again. What did you say?" You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.